Good evening and welcome to the Board of Commissioners regular workshop meeting. It is Wednesday, June the 25th, 2025, and it is 6 p.m. City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Brooks,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini, Commissioner McGeehan,
Here.
Commissioner Gavayi.
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini is absent.
Before we do public comment, I would like to add a discussion of the purchase of the 2025 Ford F-250 to the meeting tonight, if the commission is okay with that.
Absolutely.
And do you have a preference of where you'd like it to be added at?
No preference.
I'd say towards the end.
Okay.
6D possibly. I
Six-
also have a,
6D?
yeah,
Okay, perfect. Let's add it to 6D then.
and if we could add 6E mosquitoes.
6E? Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
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 Okay. Public comment. Public participation is encouraged. If you are addressing the commission, step to the podium and state your name and address for the record and the organization or group you represent. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes and do not include any topic on the agenda. Public comment on agenda items will be allowed when they come up. If you would like someone at the city to follow up on a comment or question made at the meeting, you may fill out a comment card with the contact information and give it to the city manager. Comment cards are available at the back table in the commission chambers. Completing a comment card is not mandatory. Do we have any public comment?
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is John Van Hove. I live at 585 Johns Pass Avenue, and I came to one of these meetings last month to address the same issue that I'd like to address today. I'm in the process of still recovering from the hurricane, and the last major obstacle is getting a permit to elevate my home. I came in last month and kind of gave you a look at what I've seen from the permits that are pending, how expeditiously or not they're being processed, and talked about how we might improve our process so that we can do a little bit better and turn these things around so that folks can get their homes elevated before the next major hurricane event. Last month, I took a look at the website, the permitting website for Madeira Beach, and I pulled all of the pending permits for home elevation projects. There were 19 pending permit applications, and they had been pending for an average of 5 to 6 months. So it appears to be a logjam of work that isn't getting a lot of attention. We talked about it. We talked about the possibility of maybe throwing some more assets at the problem, maybe working on communication or something we can do to streamline the process. It's become a daily ritual for me with my first cup of coffee. Before I take my first sip, I log into the city permit website and I look to see if there's been any movement. Specifically, I'm interested to see some movement with my permit, but in general, I'm looking to see if these things are starting to come off the books, if we're starting to issue some permits and chip away at the backlog. What I've seen, I think this month, I saw 2 permits get approved. There was a permit on Lillian that was approved around the 4th of June, and from start to finish, the processing of that permit took 124 days, so about 4 months. There was a permit approved on Bayshore around the 13th. Start to finish, that one took 205 days. So a little bit of movement, but this is a long wait for people that are trying to mitigate flood risk. The other side of that pancake is we've gotten 2, so we went from 19 down to 17 pending, but I think there were 5 or 6 new applications. So I think now we have 22 of these applications pending. So more are coming in than are going out. So I think it's a problem that needs some attention. I missed the meeting last month, but I did watch it, the video on YouTube, and I saw Vice Mayor Kerr ask the question to city staff 3 or 4 times, and it's a question that I beat him up with all the time. So I'm glad he's turning it around and passing it on to the city staff. But it's, what's the expectation for a homeowner when they submit a permit to have their home elevated? How long should they have to wait to get that permit approved? I think he asked the question 3 or 4 times. There was a lot of tap dancing and a lot of, well, the job's hard and it depends, and some cases are different. But I think the 3rd or 4th time he asked, the half answer that he got was, well, the long pole in the tent is to get through the initial review. And the initial review takes on average 4 to 6 weeks. My permit was submitted on the 7th of May. Today is the 25th of June, so that's 49 days or 7 weeks, well outside of that 4 to 6 week window that Vice Mayor Kerr was given as the expectation for when you can expect some comments back from the city regarding that initial review. So either the problem's bigger than we think, or that estimate wasn't very well thought out. But what I'm bringing to you today is that same question. How long should a homeowner expect to wait for a permit to elevate their homes and mitigate flood risk? And what are we doing, what can we do to make that process a little bit more efficient? And on a lighter note, I'd like to comment that I've taken to watching the YouTube recordings of these events, and I really appreciate the dialogue between the mayor and the vice mayor regarding impact fees. For the record, I'd like it to be known that I'm on the side of Vice Mayor Kerr, but if you ever approve my home elevation project and you send me that bill for $5,000 to $10,000 in impact fees,
Thank you.
I'd like to respectfully request that you put a plaque on one of those benches that you're going to install in a park that says, "This bench brought to you by John Van Hove's second mortgage. He'd like to be
Thank you
here
very
today
much.
to sit on this bench with you, but he's going to be working until the day he dies to pay off his disaster relief loan."
Thank you.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate your consideration in this matter that's super important to me.
Thank you. Do we have any further public comments?
Hey, good evening. My name is Eric Rowe. It's my fiance Taylor. We're on 145th Avenue. I'm going to make it short and sweet here. I mean, we've used all our funds available. We're broke. We're stressed like many other folks here, just trying to get back in their home and elevate their home safely, quickly, and get some peace back in our lives. And would just really appreciate it if you could apply some rational thought and just think of it, as a human being versus a bureaucrat when it comes to getting people back in their homes here. If you could consider that, we'd really appreciate that. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment?
Hi, my name is Frank Fuller. I live on East Parsley Drive, and like the two gentlemen before me, and probably all the community, we were devastated back in September by the floods. Nobody could have anticipated it. And from what I've heard from John and everything, I understand the city is doing its best. Nobody was prepared for that. The people you've hired to bring on to help process permits have been fantastic. They're all great and friendly, and we appreciate that. And we understand you're in a difficult position because a lot of the things that were set up previously probably didn't include a disaster that we experienced back in September. So I spent 30 years in the military, and when we faced challenges, we found ways to work together. And I know JAS, their company is fantastic. When we had to first of all, just a quick background. We thought about selling our house for about 3 months, but we couldn't find anything. When GAS came into our lives, they said, we think we can get it done at this cost, which we could afford, and in a reasonable amount of time. Unfortunately, we're at the beginning. Our permit was accepted about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so we're not so far down the chain as everybody else. But I'm hoping that you can work with the JAS to come up with solutions to some of the issues we're all facing. Because I know all of you want to rebuild this community as quickly as possible. And I know you face a lot of challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment?
Hello, my name is Jeremy Patterson. I am the president of Modern House and Building Movers. I just want to tell you, we're working in the area. Your staff has been unbelievable, and they've been great to work with. Any questions we had, so the city staff's been phenomenal. My input I would like to give here is over in Hillsborough County, we got it passed 7-0 about the setbacks of stairs. I think that is our biggest issue that we're running into everywhere. The FEMA guidelines allow us to go into right-of-ways on stairs in a lot of places. And I would just ask you to look at what Hillsborough did. Now St. Pete has adapted to the same thing. And I think a lot of their problems would go away if we looked at our stairway issue. And so I would just ask you to look into that and see what it is. And I think that would make a lot of improvement. Again, we are very thankful. Your staff has been very wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment? Then we will close public comment. I would like to say something just for the commission here. Those comments were about an agenda item, but I did not stop them because the agenda item isn't clear. But I know from my meetings this week with city staff that we are going to discuss what all of our public comments were on today. So if anyone is so inclined as to stay until the community development portion of our meeting, you can participate in that as well. So next on the agenda is the Board of Commissioners adopting ceremonial items policy resolution 2025-04. City Attorney?
You remember that you asked me to prepare this or to revise the ceremonial items policy. This is the same policy that you saw in the last agenda package. There's been no changes to it. I think it's ready to be set for an upcoming regular meeting for adoption, unless you have some other suggested changes to it. I would note that added to the back of the policy are some examples of the key to the city. There was a question raised as to, well, what does that look like? What can it look like? So it can either be, well, it can be anything you'd like, but there are some examples on the back. That's really not part of, in my mind, the discussion about the adoption of the policy. That's something that you guys can decide sometime in the future if you want to. But there's some examples as to what the keys of the city look like that different cities are using across the United States, whether it's just a metal key itself, and it depends on the width, the height, the length of it. Sometimes it's on a plaque, and I've shown you there are some pictures that are attached to it too. That's the only reason it's attached, is it's just to give you an idea as to what some options are for you.
Do we have any public comment? Commissioners, comments?
If I may, I've looked at all these variety of plaques, and I'm in favor of the one on page 9. If we were just to give you an input, obviously every commissioner has its own idea and opinion, but I thought probably the one on page 9 would represent us the best.
I would agree.
I would agree with that. Everybody's good with the policy as it's written?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda is City Manager, Snack Shack Repairs and Agreement Update.
Thank you, Mayor. We discussed this item a month ago at the, at the May workshop. However, the current concessionaires of the Snack Shack were not present. They asked to speak at this workshop today. Just to give an update, our engineer Pannoni is working on the repairs and working to finalize what those would look like, get the floor repaired, the walls, and all the electrical, and those contractors to complete those repairs. We do not have a timeline, but hoping, I mean, certainly over the next 3 to 4 months that those are completed. The agreement as it currently stands with United Park Service runs through July of 2026. We have had discussions where they have requested an extension. The communication, particularly from our city attorney, is not for an extension, but essentially to go out for RFP, which was the commission's consensus at the last workshop. So that's where we currently are with the snack shack. The goal is obviously to try to get it repaired and reopened, but I know that the concessionaire would like to make some comments. If you have any.
Good evening. My name is Nina McGuckin-Alvarez. My office address is 1320 9th Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33605. I represent United Park Services, the two gentlemen sitting behind me. We would like to talk, about the agreement. I think that's obviously, I think, our biggest issue. I mean, I'm sure that we all agree that getting the snack shack repaired and getting it open so we can get employees back in there, Madeira Beach employees back in and patrons back in, that's obviously, I think, everyone's goal. And I know that, we're working on that as well as you guys are. But as far as the agreement goes, like Mr. Gomez said, we have a current agreement. I'm sure you guys are aware that we signed for a 2-year extension, 2024 to 2026. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to be open since October 1st. So really, I think what we're looking for and that we hope the commission will consider is that we, fulfill our 2-year contract. And, we'd like to be able to do that from the period of time that we reopen. Certainly, the city has the right to open it to an RFP, and my clients will, happily participate in that when that comes. But from our position, we have a 2-year agreement through no fault of our own or the city's. We unfortunately can't be open at this point, but we're really just looking to be made whole on that contract. And so that's what we would be asking the commission to consider at this point.
Do we have any public comment? Commissioners, comments?
If I recall from our last meeting, the initial contract was made almost 10 years ago? Is that correct?
2014 initially.
2014.
2014, we signed the first deal.
Right, and
So I have a question. Are we having a discussion? Or, okay,
It should not be a discussion.
Okay,
There
that's
should
what-
be comment from the public, sit down, and then you have
Okay.
a discussion amongst yourselves.
right. That's what, I just wanted to be clear that
I
our
would-
discussion is here,
Right.
not with
Right.
the,
So- per what the attorney brought to our attention, is that as a board, we're not allowed to make an agreement over 10 years. And that would bring, an extension would bring us into over 10 years. So that's when I suggested that if we're going to go to an RFP, that the concessionaire be given an opportunity to just say, okay, if we're going to go to an RFP, we don't want to spend any more investment into Archibald Park, into the property, and perhaps we can get the RFP issued quicker. We don't have to wait until the end of the current contract.
correct.
And I believe that, personally, I'm going to follow the direction
Of the attorney.
of the attorney. So I would think the RFP would be coming at the end of this contract.
So I have a question about the contract, city attorney. On page 45 of our package is a good, that you can read the original contract. And on page 45 of our packet today, number 5 is the concession fee, and there's a section in there that says, In the event that Archibald Memorial Beach Park is completely closed for more than 7 consecutive days as a result of red tide, a named hurricane, an oil spill, or closing of the 150th Street Bridge as a result of an act of God, then the concession fee shall be reduced in proportion to the number of days the park was closed. That is stricken, and it was stricken in the original contract. And following that, it says business insurance. The concessionaire is not required, but is encouraged to seek business loss insurance. Business insurance if obtained by the concessionaire, may be available as insurance coverage for business costs and lost profits due to inability to conduct business due to acts of God, red tide, oil spills, or hurricanes, and if available, may cover rent and other charges for the city. We have not charged rent, my understanding is, since the storm. Were we obligated to allow them to not pay rent just because they weren't there? And I'm asking because I was asked.
There's no provision in this concession agreement that says that if there is an event such as the one that occurred, that they will not have to pay rent. Look for that specifically. So my legal opinion is they were legally obligated to pay that rent even though they weren't in there, and they could look to their business insurance for some type of reimbursement. So in theory, they should have paid it every month all the way up until now. And as for the Vice Mayor's question relative to terminating the agreement early so that you can get out the RFP sooner, you do have that provision in your agreement that allows you to unilaterally terminate this concession agreement within 90 days' notice. So you can do that if you want to, and that would alleviate the current concessionaire from having to put out huge sums of money to rebuild out the interior of it with appliances and that type of thing. So there is that possibility. The other possibility is that they just agree to terminate it, and so we don't have to wait the 90 days. So those are some options. So
But the way the contract reads, they are on the hook for paying rent.
I believe so, yes.
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 Comments?
Well, I have a question actually not related to the contract, but to the building permit. And then I'll get back to the rest of it. So is the cost of construction to bring this back to its original condition, would that be less than 50% of the value? Do we know?
Yes.
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 Okay, so we're fine in there.
Yeah, we obtained an appraisal, and the repairs will be less than 50% of that appraisal, which I believe was over 800,000.
Okay. Now, from my perspective, as far as being a good Samaritan, I think we should help these folks. This was a disaster that occurred, and it hurt and damaged a lot of pocketbooks. So from my perspective, I would be in favor of giving him that 1 year of extension and also waiving the fees, because they were not able to do business. You know, I understand we're the city and so forth and so on, but I think, you know, they're small business, and from my perspective, I would be in favor of helping them.
I would also. I believe that the Snack Shack and Madeira Beach, we can work well together, and we could have a good future together. And our investment would be long-term. Unfortunately, what happened in September was bad for all the barrier island communities. And if we can work together and resolve this issue, the sooner the better, and maybe expedite the RFP also.
So are you saying that you agree with Vice Mayor Kerr and the city attorney that we cannot do an extension on their existing contract because it takes them beyond the 10 years? Or are you saying you want to extend their contract beyond the 10 years against the advice of the city attorney?
I would be in favor of extending their contract.
Okay.
Legally, you don't have the authority to do that.
Okay.
Your charter specifically limits the exercise of your powers, and it tells you in section 1.7, I'll just read it to you. The Board of Commissioners shall submit to a referendum vote of the electors of the city at an election to be called by the Board of Commissioners and shall require a majority vote of the electorate in favor before approving, and it's paragraph number 2, the one that is important, the sale, conveyance, or lease for a term that exceeds 10 years of any land owned or possessed by the city, only after a favorable referendum vote by a majority of the electors' votes cast may such a property interest be sold, leased, or conveyed, provided, however, that the city shall have the power to convey a public utility easement without requiring a referendum vote of the electors of the city. And remember now, the title of that section is Limitation on Excess of Powers. So it's my opinion, you don't have the legal authority to enter into a lease agreement such as this one here, this concessionaire agreement, for a period of time in excess of 10 years.
Is it within our right to allow them to be released from the lease they have existing and to waive the rent that would be due from September to that date, and then us to put out an RFP?
You have the legal right to do that. That's a legislative issue. You can forgive the rent, and you can also, and remember, your contract specifically gives you the right to terminate, but if there's maybe it's a consent agreement to terminate sooner so that you can get the RFP done sooner, that's definitely an option.
I would be in favor in asking them if they wanted to consent to dissolve the lease, however that's worded. Terminate, sorry, and forgive the rent from hurricane to whenever that is done, and then move forward with allowing them the opportunity to then bid on, they're not going to get in the property any quicker. Even if we could extend it, the amount of work that has to be done and the things that have to be done, and after all of our discussions, it seems to me that it would be in their financial best interest to come in with a bid or an RFP for that and get an extended lease then that we could then give them.
Exactly, definitely. That's what.
And we could give them what we did last time, 2 years plus the opportunity for 2 2-year extensions.
We could terminate the lease, as you had said.
Right.
Forgive the amount of the back pay, or the back rent, and then also, they can be involved with the RFP.
Right.
And I think that's a great idea for both parties involved.
I don't really think that we should be negotiating this with them
Oh, well, I'm
here
not
now
negotiating, I'm
today.
just, for us, for conversation, for what we would, I'm not asking to negotiate it.
Okay, I would just like to give the attorney the ability to review the agreement again,
Yes.
based upon what we've had to say, talk to her clients, come up with a solution that she believes and we believe is something that both sides are going to be okay with.
Yep.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
I'll be agree with it.
Agree with that.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Good. Next on the agenda is comments are over. Next on the agenda is John's past dredging update.
Thank you, Mayor. And as we look to have our contractor complete the permitting for obtain permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, their latest communication is they're waiting for FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, to complete a review. Our contractor, Aptim, provided them some additional information specifically regarding state lands easement sketch, the best management practices, and uniform mitigation assessment method. And once FDEP replied they have it, they are under review. Once they complete that review, then that would complete the FDEP's process, and then the U.S. Army Corps, our contractor Aptim will be communicating with tomorrow via phone, that would complete the reviews that are necessary to this point to where then the permits could be issued, but they will know more tomorrow. I can certainly, at our next one-on-one, or email you what the status of their conversation is tomorrow, which they confirmed that earlier today. And as I stated last month, we did receive the extension through December 31st, 2026 of the $1,556,000 appropriated by the legislature a few years ago.
Do we have any public comment? Commission comments?
Guess we'll have to wait to hear back from Robin.
If we could get an email after.
Yeah, I'll give you an
Yeah.
email tomorrow and see
Perfect.
if that's.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
This says that the bid documents are drafted and under review. Drafted and under review by whom?
By their internal review process. And then
Okay.
they will forward that to us. And that's been more than a month. Tomorrow I'm going to ask them just to
Okay.
forward those to us so our engineering can review them.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is HR compensation study. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. And a project that's been taking a few months, and we do have with us here, thank you for hanging around, is John Muller.
Close enough. I answer anything at this stage, Robin.
With, excuse me, with formerly known as the Gearing Group, now known as Risk Advisors. So I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. John Muller, Risk Strategies Company, as Robin said, formerly Gearing Group. We are the firm that was contracted with the city to complete the compensation study. Unfortunately, we kicked this off right about the time that the storm rolled through here, so it's delayed things a bit. But we do have, you were all provided this, and I know that we did have some slides submitted, but I wanted to review, the methodology, what we've done, where we're at, and what our recommendations are to the city to implement your new pay plan if you so choose to go that route.
Give me just a moment, sorry. Not sure where.
I have it up. I just want to make sure you all can see it.
Sorry, it's coming up on the screen. Not working on it.
All right, thanks, Robin. So the overview of what I'm going to talk about this evening, it's on the next slide. So I'm going to review the project methodology and our approach, discuss what our findings were, present our recommendation for the pay plan and what our compression analysis is, and we'll talk about what that actually is since it's a hard thing for everyone to grasp, and then review what the financial impact would be to the city if we go forward in this direction, and we're estimating that you would implement this, for your next fiscal year, so given that October timeframe. So what did we do? Well, we held a discovery meeting with the city team, which was a city manager and the assistant to the city manager, to understand really what were the goals, what were the scope of this project, what were you hoping to achieve in doing this. And part of this, we did review all of the city's information, so your pay plan, your benefits, all of your job classifications and descriptions, to get a real thorough understanding of what you all offer your employees now. So we completed that assessment. We did review each one of your job descriptions. We solicited feedback from city employees on 2 different occasions. We didn't get everybody's feedback, but we got quite a bit, which that's helpful in us taking that into consideration as we're reviewing the job descriptions. Because, hey, these job descriptions, even though they're accurate, sometimes there's things that people are doing that we want to make sure we can account for. With that said, it still has to be related to the scope of their position. For example, if you have somebody that's, and I'm being facetious here a little bit, washing dishes, but then you're also asking them to go out there and scrub decks, we're not going to be able to compare that exactly. Because when we look at these other jobs from other agencies, they're not constructed that way usually. So we did benchmark those 61 different job descriptions across 14 different entities in the area. Those entities are all listed up there. As you'll see, it's kind of a wide breadth. There are communities that are smaller and have a smaller budget than the city of Madera Beach. There's also ones that are a bit larger. The reason we do that is because we're looking at really, I hate to say it, it's your direct competition for talent, right? Even though Clearwater is operating with a different budget than you all, it's very reasonable that somebody who works for the city today could go take a job with the city of Clearwater. So when we benchmark these positions, what we're doing is we're looking at each one of your job descriptions and comparing them to all the job descriptions we've collected from these other agencies and finding the closest match. So we did that and we compiled all of this data and we're looking at percentiles. So once we benchmark each of the roles and list all the salary data for those comparable positions, we're looking at the 50th percentile of the market, so that dead middle point. We're looking at the 65th and the 75th percentile typically. And we're looking at ranges, so we're looking at where those salaries go from the minimum end to the top end of the spectrum. Once we compiled all this data, we did review it with the city manager and the assistant to the city manager. And what we found was the city of Madera Beach, really you are already above the 50th percentile. In some regards, you are already kind of trending towards the 65th percentile. So we opted to really focus on that 65th percentile of the market data to start evaluating where we should build your pay plan, how we should construct that. So we did develop those new pay ranges and place the positions in those pay ranges. That information has been turned over to the city. As part of this, we look at each of the jobs and we do testing for FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. That's to help you devise whether or not that job really is eligible for overtime or not. And so what we did find in reviewing this, you had probably 6 to 7 jobs. They were all supervisor level jobs that had previously been classified as non-exempt or eligible for overtime. Our recommendation would be that you take those positions because typically supervisory jobs are classified as exempt from overtime. And we'll talk through what we've kind of decided how that might affect it. And then ultimately we did conduct this compression analysis. So what that is we're taking your roster of existing employees, looking at the job they're in, how long they've been in that job here with the city, and what their current pay is. And what we're doing then is adjusting them if they need to come up to a new minimum salary for that new salary range for that role. And then the compression piece, the easiest way to explain it is this is taking into consideration how long somebody's been in that job and what's gone on in the market during that time. You might have even hired people into that same role and you're bringing them in at a higher salary over time, right? Because the market dictates that. So you've got people that have been in that job longer, they get compressed. And what we do in that analysis is we typically take the midpoint of that new salary range and we say, if somebody's been in that job for 10 years, they should at least be at the middle of that salary range. And there's a sliding scale and we adjust the percentile based on that. So what you have happen is individuals get moved up to the new minimum and then they still may get additional compression raises in that initial analysis. And we'll talk through what that looks like for the city. So as we constructed the new, if you can go to the next slide, please. As we constructed the new pay plan, as I said, we based it on the 65th percentile of the market because of where the city already was, and we wanted you to be competitive. One of the things we did have to account for, several of the entities that we compared you against, they didn't have a comparable for every single one of your positions, right? Some of those entities you saw listed up there are relatively small, like they have 2 or 3 positions total in the entire town or city. Some don't have the same facilities. Some are not operating a marina, so they don't have that many positions that are dedicated to marina. And then what we also knew, and I knew this because our firm was bidding on this at the time, the City of Safety Harbor was going through a pay study at this same time, so we didn't really have good data from them. Anything we would have taken from them would have been already outdated, and we didn't really use it. So how do we put these positions on the new pay plan? We're looking at the comparable level of skill within your city and the pay grade that they're currently in today. And should they stay with some of those same positions? For example, oftentimes what we will do, We'll keep all the directors in the same pay grade. We'll keep all managers that are managing a similar sized department in the same pay grade. So even if we didn't have direct comparisons or enough good comparisons, we're trying to keep that job family together. And throughout this exercise and with the feedback that we did get from some of the employees that completed the questionnaires, we had to revise some positions, or we condensed some positions. So you had different levels of accounting. We consolidated that. I believe we come back with only 2 levels now. You had a senior mechanic, which, as I understand it, is really a position that's occupied by one individual today and will be going away. So we did classify the other mechanic positions. We classified some positions that are not occupied, such as an HR generalist or an HR director, because as we understood the project, the city may elect to fill those positions down the road. Did the same thing with finance. And then with marina and parking enforcement, those are 2 of the areas that we didn't get a lot of comparable information on, because again, a lot of the other agencies didn't have a marina that's being staffed by city employees. And same thing with parking enforcement. That's oftentimes part of the police department, or it's even outsourced completely. So we did have to really look at these positions and figure out where it made sense to put them on the pay plan. So the next slide, after we did the compression analysis, this is what we came back with, this is what we found. Out of moving everybody into the new pay ranges, you have 18 people, or 18 employees that are below the new minimums of the pay range. So to implement the pay study, you would need to bring those people at least to the new minimums. So that 18 people, that cost to the city would roughly be $37,667, just to get everybody to the new minimum salary ranges that we've proposed. You have 1 employee that would be above the new pay ranges, and there's a variety of different ways that we can advise you on helping to address that. Typically, what will happen when somebody's above, let's say they're $500 above their salary range for the year, an entity will usually take that $500 and pay them out in a lump sum payment, and it won't go towards their retirement and things of that nature, because they are at the maximum of that salary range. Once we looked at the compression analysis, again, that is moving those individuals further up in the pay plan based on how long they've been in that job. That cost to the city, we're estimating at a little bit over $89,000. And the reason why I'm saying we're estimating this, because in talking with the city manager, with Robin, we noted that these individuals that now would be going from non-exempt to exempt potentially, we looked at what their average overtime pay has been over the last few years. So to make sure nobody's been disadvantaged, some of those people, if we just added that to their pay, that will take them above, or at least to, what the compression analysis says. For some people, that would still be below where the compression is. So I'm saying this is still an estimate, but it's a pretty close estimate. And if you look, we did factor in what the total cost to implement to the city would be. This includes the things that in payroll that the city is paying for, including FICA, unemployment insurance, pension that you're already paying for, and that cost is pretty close. I always say it's close because if somebody leaves today or you hire somebody tomorrow, that could affect this, but you're looking at about $157,360 to implement, and that is based on implementing in the October pay cycle. Overall, if you go this route, 31 of your employees are being impacted by the study. That's a good thing, right? So whenever I start one of these engagements, I always tell everyone, no matter what you say to your staff, everybody hears compensation study and they all think they're getting a raise. The reality is that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to look at the positions objectively, get you on par with the market, and then the people that are in those affected positions, make sure they're being paid appropriately within that pay scale. So 31 out of your employees, that is still a good representation of people that are going to see some benefit immediately out of this pay study. But I do always say everyone sees a benefit because there's a good chance their pay ranges and their earning income in the future is increased without them moving into a new position. And again, it'll help you all because as I'm seeing around this area, there's a lot of other agencies that are going through this process right now. So you want to stay competitive with the market. so that you don't have positions that stay open for long periods of time, especially when you have a real glaring need in a particular area. I'll take any questions you all might have, and I
Do we
know I
have
might
any-
need to explain compression better, too.
Do we have any public comment? Commissioners' comments?
Just a couple questions
Sure.
here, real quick. I know, when did we start this study? How long-
So unfortunately, we had the disadvantage of kicking this off right when the hurricane
It's
came
been a
through.
while,
Yep.
yes.
And then we had this relatively completed probably a couple months back, but I know there were some scheduling issues on my end, and we were trying to make sure it was important that I was here to explain this to everybody.
Okay. And when you talked to the employees, was that in person or was that in an
No, it's through
email?
an online questionnaire that we have developed.
Online
Yep.
questionnaire? Okay.
Yeah, we do it anonymously, and then we don't even see the individual's names. We're just seeing what position they're in and gathering that data. And we look for current themes, and if something doesn't look right, then we did come back with questions, and, we'll ask that to go back to the department.
Okay. And 18 employees were below the minimum of the new pay range?
Yeah, so the new proposed pay plan, you have 18 employees if you implement that new pay plan, that they're currently below the new minimum for their position, so they would need to be at least brought to that new minimum.
And with that communications, is any of this pay increase based on performance?
Nope, so this is completely a market study. We're looking this as an outside, independent, third party, and that's why I said the compression analysis, it's based on longevity. Me as somebody that's been an HR practitioner for over 2 decades, I'm a big proponent of performance-based pay.
Right.
But you've got to get on market and have a pay plan that's representative of the market before you tackle performance-based pay.
Okay. And then basically, it will cost the city $157,360 to implement this?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My question is probably for our city manager. What inspired this study?
Well, we had discussed this for several years, but really last year, the Civil Service Commission very directly asked to have this performed. The last one was in 2019.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just trying to understand the 50% percentile versus the 65 percentile. The city, if I understood you correctly, is already above the 50 percentile. So if you
Above the
work in
50th, but you're below the 65th.
So if you
yeah.
work here at Madeira Beach, odds are you're better than average if you work somewhere else.
Yeah, compared to some of the others, definitely doing better.
And what would drive the city to drive up into that 65 percentile?
That's a conversation that we had with the city manager, and it's typically our stance as an outside consultant that you're bringing us in, that you are trying to be more competitive in the market, that you're trying to get above the 50th percentile. Most agencies that we work with usually shoot for the 75th or sometimes even higher, but we understand, given the size of the city too, that may not be feasible from a budgetary standpoint.
Well, the size of the city, and you just sat through I
Yeah.
believe you were here with our
I did, yeah.
budget, and where we are this year with the capital expenditures that we have. So that'll all go into play into the discussion. But is the full study going to be available?
Yep, so the full pay plan, the benchmarking results, and the compression analysis, we have already made that available through a shared drive to the city.
So the city manager has that? Because I haven't seen it,
Yep.
so. And this presentation as well?
That is correct.
Okay, I look forward to looking at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out as well.
I have some.
Yeah. No, I meant after you review everything. I get those questions all the time afterwards.
Every employee did not participate in the in the survey. How
Correct.
many participated? Do you know?
I would have to look back, but I would say it was less than half of the employees. And that's why we did open it back up a second time well into the study. That was actually at the request of the Civil Service Commission, and I think we got like 5 more employees that filled it out.
So my understanding, and I'm asking this so you can correct me, but my understanding when we approved this study was that you were going to come in, you being your company, and sit with each individual employee and have a conversation. That was what, so that was an incorrect.
That was not in the
That was
scope
not.
of work that we presented. It is an option, but we did not present it in this case.
Okay. And the percentile, it includes benefits or does not?
No, this is just purely salary.
Just purely salary?
But we do look at your benefits and try to see where you stack up and rank.
Do you
And-
provide that information in this, when we do get to see this completed study, will that information be in there? Specifically, what I would be looking for is how do we compare in benefits to our surrounding municipalities?
So I have a high-level
Of that?
survey that I can provide. I hate to say this, but it's almost like you're comparing apples to oranges sometimes because your plans are going to be made up differently.
Right.
But I know what you're probably looking at and what your employees are looking at is probably what does it cost me versus if I go to work in this,
Well, and
how's it
what
hitting my paycheck?
Yeah, and I mean, for me in particular, I am a big supporter of giving benefits to the employees because as a municipality, you can only pay so much. I mean, we're paying off of tax dollars. You cap out at a number. So what can you do for the employee that we may be at the 65th percentile of pay and that's all great, but what can we do other than create a culture that makes someone want to be here? What can we provide to them that would make them say, I don't want to leave Madeira because they do ABC.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what other municipalities offer along those lines, and a high level would be great if you could provide that.
I have another question, thank you. It's my recollection that when we talked about approving the study, that it wasn't only going to be salaries, but it was going to be benefits, and that it was also going to be the description, that we were going to get.
So we provided several proposals or several options to the city. And at least at the time of contracting, I believe we engaged for the compensation study and I believe looking at job descriptions and refreshing the data down the road was an option as well. The full benefits review and full job description review was not part of the scope that we agreed to.
My recollection, it was a base, as you mentioned, and then there was an option 1 and an option 2.
Yeah, there were buy-ups.
And we approved option 1, but not option 2, and I'd have to go back into the.
Yeah, I'll double check. I'm happy to send over the scope that was signed off on.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to look back at our meetings from a year ago and see what that was. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, if the report does go over the benefits, I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, regardless of what we did, we have a very high-level report that we can do, and it's actually more broad than just your immediate area in terms of benefits, because that is a large portion of what our company does, so we can very easily include that. That doesn't take much time.
Yeah, because I believe the city offers a great benefit package.
I do as well.
So, okay, thank you.
Any further comments, questions?
No further comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You might want to stay now.
I know.
Next on the agenda is the Barrier Islands Governmental Council, and I will speak to that. Today was the Big C meeting. It was very informative. Barry Burton with the county came and spoke about, and his team came and spoke about beach renourishment. And even though beach renourishment is very important for all of the other communities on the Barrier Island, Madeira Beach does not get to participate in that. We do not get beach renourishment. It was encouraging. I'll just share a little bit with you that the county has gotten the permits to be able to do beach renourishment in other communities up and down the islands. It's $130 million. And Barry said that it would be required to redo every 5 years. And one of the challenges is, or one of the things that they spoke of, is that getting the approvals for, or getting the access rights from homeowners up and down the beaches, people don't want to sign the access rights. The county is still going to have to get rights from each homeowner, but it's it's just for that particular thing. They're still having a hard time, which is they don't sign off on it. But then they talked about the legislative need to change what the Army Corps does and how that is something that needs to be done on a federal level. And so the county is working with Anna Paulina Luna and Rick Scott to get that changed federally. That's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but they are working on it. The other thing that they talked about is insurance. And the Florida League of Cities came and did this presentation. I would like to give you a better, some more information on this at our next regularly scheduled meeting, just to give you a report, because she did quite a extensive slideshow presentation, and there were a lot of things in it that, for being prepared for the hurricane, that she talked about. And some of them I know we do because of being around after Helene and Milton, but there were quite a few things I had never heard of before. So I'm interested to have the opportunity to sit with the city manager and go through the presentation, and then be able to come back and present that to all of you, and the information that it would be for the community as well. And if we're not doing all of the things that were in it, as to why we aren't, but I believe that there's at least some opportunities to make us better at what we did post-hurricane because of that presentation today. It was a good presentation. So do we have any public comment? Commission, you have any questions?
I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I don't have this digitally, but Tom has it on a thumb drive, and I'm going to ask him to send it to Robin so
We'll
that
email
Robin
it to all of
can,
you.
you have it to share with everyone.
That'd be great.
And then at our next meeting, I'll talk some specifics to the items in it and what we do here at the city.
Well, we were going to have a post-event or post-disaster, I don't know what you want to call it, meetings about what we can do better and set up for the next
So,
time we do have a disaster.
Chief, could I ask you, after a storm, what is the report that you do?
If it's a major storm, I do an after-action plan.
We can't hear you.
If it's a major storm, I do an after-action plan.
After
or a
action.
review.
Right, but we were going to put together basically a handbook, I'll call it, so that we don't have to
So
make any mistakes that we may have made this time.
I think that we should have a workshop, because I think that in listening to Chief and several other cities and organizations in the county, they all do after-action reports on everything. And the county does an after-action report, and they did one post-Helene and post-Milton, and we didn't as a city. If we did, I haven't seen it. And I think that the benefit to a after-action report would be, we would have to have that meeting to sit and talk about what those things are. And so,
And, well, that's something that can be put on the website so
Abs-
that when a disaster is imminent, people have a place to go and look for answers. What comes next? What should we do prior?
I agree.
This sort of thing. But I did have another question about the $130 million for the beach replenishment. Is that all county funds?
it's all county funds. Now, they're funding it through the tourism tax. But the interesting thing was it was interesting to me because I just didn't know it. They're pumping the sand from different locations out in the water right up to the beach. So it's not they're not carting in sand like from somewhere else. So there's an area down near Johns Pass that they will pump sand from onto the beaches. There's an area up by Sand Key that they will pump sand from onto the beaches.
So that could open up the past. because
Nope,
that's-
it's not that sand.
No, not that sand, not in the past, but as you're boating going out,
Yeah.
there's a lot of shoals out there that could be,
Yeah. There's a specific area, I don't know where it is, but I was curious, and I would think that Levy could probably show us where
Yeah,
that is.
it's west of
It's
the
a shoal,
pass.
yeah.
But the mayor's correct, one down west of John's Pass area, I can't think of the term, but it's like a recovery area where they do extract the sand, and then one up near the Sand Key Pass as well. Because Sand Key has been filled a couple of times, so
Yeah.
good, great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the report.
Anything? All righty, so next on the agenda is Integris VCISO.
And from our budget workshop or the last meeting where Andrew Laughlin presented a budget amendment, the additional fees for our IT work. Our IT contractor or firm is Integris. Due to a change in Florida law a couple of years ago, it was the statute that was created required cities to have a cybersecurity plan, essentially programs. Integris offered, as our IT, once we chose them, to offer a virtual CIO or Chief Information Security Officer. And that's what the additional $5,000 a month that we've been paying or is going toward providing and developing policies and procedures that they've developed. They're sending them to us as they are developed. I started reviewing some. We're going to have staff review them. But there are a lot of cybersecurity components, everything from the basics of password protection to avoiding phishing, spam type emails, not allowing bring your own devices to work. A lot of what I think a lot of individuals already use, but it's now a requirement. We're using it for this year. Whether we continue for next year will be determined over the next couple of months, but this may be, and I think I shared with one or maybe more of you, a impetus really to issue the next RFP for our IT services to see this can be included in a reply that we receive for our information technology services.
Do we have any public comment? Commission, questions, comments?
This Mayor and Commission, as in your agenda packet, the one-pager item that I put in, which is what the program is, it does say that it is for a 12-month commitment. So we are reviewing and determining for next year at this point.
When does their contract expire?
I believe you approved either a 3 or a 5 year, so we still have, I think, two years at least. I don't remember I'd have to look at the agreement, but it was a multi-year agreement, but there is a way to, obviously, out of the agreement, but I believe at a minimum it was a 3-year agreement. I'll look and get back with you.
Yeah, well, I think we need to review that. Thank you.
So my question is, I did go and get the RFQ that we did, and why is this not a part of it? I mean, it says here that we have cybersecurity training. So why was this, if we need a $5,000 a month, I don't even understand, why wasn't it part of or why is it not considered part of the original agreement? Because it looks like that should have been part of it.
Yeah, it was just not not included. Couldn't tell you why it was not part of it, but it came after.
Okay, but that's $60,000. And why, and it started last year, you started paying this last year, you made a
Well,
commitment.
this fiscal year, right?
Didn't the payments to them start last year?
I'd have to go back and check.
It might be the fiscal year, but it was
Yeah.
in November.
Yeah,
So in
October,
November,
I think.
October, you made a commitment to spend $60,000 and didn't bring it to the commission.
No, I think it did come to the commission, but it was.
And we approved
but
this?
It was presented as a new requirement by the state. And if, that's my recollection, and we said, well, if it's a requirement, by the state, it's mandated, what do we do? Now, we did not research to see if it should have been included. So that was shame on us. But now I think, as you're pointing out, in your opinion, and some of the RFP responders
It's right
may have
there.
included it and some did not. So that's the deal.
The way that I read the RFQ was that this was part of.
Should have been included.
It was part of, so why would we pay an additional 60,000 on top of the almost 200,000 we're paying? That, I'd like to better understand that. And, I mean, $5,000 a month, what are we getting for $5,000 a month?
Exactly.
That's a lot of money.
I agree.
I know, because you brought it up.
Well, again, all the services are listed in the document before you, and they're, again, providing a process and a project for the ability for them to protect all of their IT data and everything that we produce. But we'll get much more, and we'll get the additional information.
Yeah, well,
It just seems like it should have, it seems like what this
Part of
is
it.
saying they're going to do should be part of the contract we have for the $200,000 a year. It doesn't seem like we should be paying extra.
so if they present that they didn't have to include this, but this is something that was mandated by the state, I would suggest that what do we need to do to break this and go out to RFP to be all-inclusive?
All inclusive.
So I'd like to clarify, I think we're saying the same thing. Was this scope of work included in our original RFQ? And if it was, then we shouldn't be paying for it.
If it was, we should be reimbursed what we
Correct.
paid.
Correct. Anything further?
I'm on board with you, Mayor. This is a lot of money.
I can't hear.
I am on board with you. This is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. All right.
Yep, we'll get back to you.
Thank you, Robin. Next on the agenda is community development, nonconformances, variances, and open sky requirements.
So Mayor and Commission, as the staff prepare for this, again, the source of the questions and concerns post-storm, now that we're in the phase where we're having property owners apply to build new structures and certainly elevate existing structures, we're getting requests for, as the item states, variances or other requests related to existing non-conforming, either existing or existing non-conforming uses in various lots. So staff will provide a review of and some examples, and then determine based on the discussion and input, what, if any, future changes to either existing processes or existing city codes. And also keep in mind that some of the requirements are related to the Florida Building Code, so anything that may need to be changed might require a statutory change.
first example we're going to go over. This is going to be the second,
Okay.
and this is going to be the third.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. What's that? I guess the last one.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. So obviously permitting is a big issue right now. As people have addressed, it takes a long time to get a building permit. Today we're going to go over some of the reasons for that. Obviously it's a combination of things. Number one being the volume of permits, but also, as we'll see, it's a lot of the permits that are coming in are getting denied. So we're going to talk about some of the reasons behind that and some possible solutions that we can change to our code to help not only expedite the permits, but get them approved the way that the homeowners and applicants are wanting them to get approved in the first place. I'll start with an introduction. So for anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Joseph. I'm a planner with the city. I'm also a certified floodplain manager.
Marcy Forbes, the Community Development Director. I'm a CFM and an engineer.
And my name is Andrew Morris. I'm the long-range planner in the Community Development Department.
So I passed out a few examples. We'll put them on the screen as we go over them as well. But basically, there's four different code sections we can possibly change to help with the issues. We'll see that as we go through the examples. We'll see the issues and how those codes could possibly come into effect. But just to sum it up, and again, we'll go over it later, but the four possible code sections would be the non-conforming code section, which basically addresses anything that's in existence that doesn't meet the current code, which is for Madeira Beach, far more than half of all applications, whether it be the structure is non-conforming with the setbacks, or the lot is non-conforming, or a combination of both of those. Another possible, and the non-conforming code has a lot of issues, to be honest with you, that need to be addressed down the line. If we brought the non-conforming section, it would be just the essential things to get the ball rolling with the permit applications, and then we would bring the non-conforming again at some point in the future to address the other issues. So that's one possible code that could be changed. Another is the open sky code, which I believe is 110-427, and that's part of the agenda packet. The open sky code basically explains what's allowed in the setbacks. Most of the reasons the permits are being denied are setback issues. And the open sky kind of defines how Madeira Beach code looks at setbacks and what's allowed in the setback. Is it the building? Is it the deck? This kind of gives your allowances into what's allowed within the setbacks. So that's the open sky code. A third possible area we can change the code to help expedite the permits would be the setback requirements in general within the zoning districts. For most of the issues we're seeing, it's in the R1 and R2 zoning districts, which is for the residential areas. The required setbacks have historically and are currently 20 feet in the front. On the water in R1, it's 30 feet from the water's edge of the seawall. Most other situations it's 25 feet. And then there's different side setbacks based on the zoning and the lot width. So that's another possibility. Those first three code sections that I just went over, if we were to change any of those, it would require, since they're all part of the land development regulations, it would require us bringing the possible amendments to the Planning Commission for their input. One of the downsides to that is it would add time to adopting the ordinance. So a fourth option is kind of an obsolete code we haven't really used much. It's in Chapter 14. It's not part of the land development regulations. So if we made some changes to that code, it might be a little bit faster. That code is, it's called Moving of Structures. It's Chapter 14, Article 4. And it's really was written more, it hasn't been changed since at least 1984, probably earlier. And it was written, kind of seems like for the intent on if somebody's going to move a house from one lot to another lot off of Madeira Beach or even within Madeira Beach. So obviously that doesn't happen very often, so it's not a code that we've really used much, but possibly some amendments can be made there to help expedite the elevating structure permits. That would only be a temporary solution because it wouldn't help with the new builds, but that would get us around having to go to Planning Commission, so that's a fourth possibility. So now I'll go over some of the examples. You wanna go over, So the first example, Andrew's going to pull it up on the screen. And can you zoom in to the side plan? So this is a permit application we've received and reviewed for an elevating of an existing structure. And basically, what we highlighted in orange is the allowable buildable area for a deck and staircases. So based on the way the code's written currently, any addition, so I'm sure we know in our non-conforming section already, you're allowed to elevate an existing structure even if it's not compliant with the setbacks and it's grandfathered in. So you would think, oh, that's easy. Why are these permits taking so long? It's grandfathered in. But as you'll see by a lot of these examples, you'll need to add decks and stairs to access the home. And the way our code is written, any addition, including stairs and decks, have to meet the setback requirements. And if the structure is already non-conforming, that doesn't leave a lot of options to add stairs and access. So in the way the code's written right now with the open sky, you're allowed to encroach 50% of the side yard setbacks with access stairs, but there's no allowance for the front or the rear. So this example, in the front of the house, the access is currently in the front of the house. So the applicant proposed to add a front deck and stairs to access the stairs to access the home, but we had to deny the permit application because it encroaches into the required 20-foot setback, which the house already encroaches. So the part that already encroaches is grandfathered in, but they can't add anything else. A lot of times people ask about variances. Well, can we go for a variance? Number one, a variance is really for a particular lot and a particular situation. In 2020, the city passed an ordinance that made variances even more stringent than they already are. It has to meet all 6 of the criteria, one of which being that it has to be the minimum possible. There has to be no other way to make reasonable use of the lands. In the next example, I'll go more into depth on that. But basically, with the way that this lot sits, the orange area is the only way they would be able to access the house. So that would leave them the options of either remodeling the inside and cutting into the slab and having to build access into there, which is obviously costly, or relocating the front door to one of the sides and having to have the stairs and access off to the sides, which the applicant isn't very interested in. If we could go to the next example. Yep. So this is a similar example, also a conforming size lot, and also an elevating of an existing structure. And this one actually went for a variance, and the variance got denied. So this structure, they were proposing, and this site plan is what they submitted with their variance application. They had proposed to add in the already non-conforming rear setback an additional balcony of 4 feet wide. But there was some, excuse me, sorry. But then when we brought it to the special magistrate, it didn't meet all 6 of the criteria, since the Florida Building Code only requires one means of ingress and egress to the house. So the rear balcony doors, it wasn't a necessity, which a variance is only for a necessity if there's no other way to access the house, for example. So the variance got denied for that and a few other reasons. On this sheet that we have open now, this is their revised plan after the variance got denied. They have proposed to seal off the back access and now they're only accessing the back on the side. So they lost those rear sliding glass doors, and now it's only a minimal access. So they're kind of keeping the footprint. Our open sky section allows rear cantilevered balconies of up to 4 feet to encroach into the required setback. So if the required setback is already beyond that, then you can't add anything else. But on the left side there, and we're waiting on the applicant to revise these drawings, but they're going to be able to make it work, and we can approve this permit once it's a cantilevered balcony on the left side there. So that kind of shows why, unfortunately, variances aren't always the best option, and we want to ideally have a code that we can just approve the permit without having to go through the variance process, which adds time and money to the applicant as well as staff time and delays permitting even further. And then I'll pass it to, I believe, Marcy has the next example.
Pretty much similar to what Joe just showed you guys. This is an example of the buildable area for a lot. Let's see, I'll get Andrew to zoom in. Similar struggles here, though. The lot's already maxed out in the front yard. Actually, it's already encroaching by like half a foot, and so there's no opportunity to provide front access given our current code. Plenty of room in the back, so I'm sitting here looking at the permit going, do I deny the front stairs on it with the condition that they can build the back stairs until we get our code corrected such that you can build the front stairs? And it just becomes a snowball effect. And if we don't think about the entirety of your project, the homeowner is the only person that's going to suffer because you're getting it up in the air. And I would love if we could get every house 5-10 feet in the air and then stop and figure out how to get your access. I'd be all for that because I feel for every one of you. The storm is coming, and we got to get your houses up. Our code is not designed for elevating structures. It's old. Every community is going through this. If you look it up, it's the biggest challenge elevating structures they have. So I know the screen is greened out, but it's just simply another example of what Joe has shown you, that we're hobbled by our code right now. And unfortunately, I can't come in and go, listen, I'm an engineer. We're going to do this logically. I approve this. Just move on and keep going. I would love to be able to do that, but we have to work within our land development regulations. But like Joe told you, the other night it was driving me crazy. I'm like, there has to be something we can do. So I did find the section of moving structures, and we could, and because of where that's located in our code, we could do possibly an expedited route. We need to work with the attorney to make sure we're on the same page. And like Joe said, that would be strictly geared towards elevating the structures. The one thing we're also knowing is you guys are all here representing JAS, so they're one of the many contractors we're working with. We have Davy Shoring, Modern Movers, AJS. So we have a lot of different elevating contractors, all of whom do a different scope of work. Some of them elevate your home, they're done. Some of them elevate your home, pour your slab, they're done. Some of them do the infill for your garage that you're going to turn into living space. Some of them don't. So we're having to really sort through the scope of work they're doing, get the plans just so I don't want a drainage plan if they're not really going to touch your yard. So we're getting rid of that. We've gotten rid of geotech because they're doing the foundation plans. We're asking for those after the fact. But if it is not in their scope of work, I am trying to peel that away from your permit process. We're doing everything we can to streamline this to make sure that at the end of the day, you get what you think you're going to get and deserve to get, and we don't let you put yourself into a corner and all of a sudden you find out there's nothing we can do to get you front stairs access. I'd rather you know that up front. We can make design changes early on or adjustments, whatever we need to do. That is the delay. But every day we're thinking of ways to communicate, get things done. I was on the phone with one of the contractors twice today. And it was funny too because I said, well, can you send me a contract? Because I really want to know that something is not buried in there that the homeowners are digging for and didn't realize they're not going to get. He's like, oh no, contract straight up, we're just lifting the home. I go, no slab work, no nothing else. He goes, nothing else, Marcy. Sends me the contract. I'm like, it literally says here that you're pouring the slab underneath the house. And he started laughing and I said, this is what we're going through. You're living it too. You didn't even realize that that was in this particular housing contract. He's like, yeah, it's probably not any of my others in Madeira Beach. And that's to the point that we are working together, and it is a learning curve. So I'm not going to say that we're doing the best we can on our end. We're adjusting, and we're trying to learn with it, and we're trying to communicate better with the contractors who are submitting it. They're getting better about understanding explicitly what we're asking for. I do foresee the floodgates to start opening up for these permits. You will get them with some conditions, but I'm trying to figure out how to give them to you with conditions so you can get the elevation in progress, but that you understand as a homeowner, You still have work to do. Once they elevate your home, if they're not doing your access stairs, if they're not infilling your garage, if you're taking your slab at grade up 6 inches or 8 inches or a foot, somebody's going to have to grade that, swell it. So somebody along the way is going to have to show us that you know you need to do that and that it's being permitted. So to the mayor's point, our agenda didn't really tell you we were going to talk about this because we were focused on trying to fix our code to help with this process. So I know it's been frustrating, and we do hear you. So, Andrew, do you want to go ahead and say something?
For new construction, we've been having to do a good amount of variances for rebuilding after catastrophic loss, which is basically a residential structure that's been substantially damaged. The owner wants to demolish it and replace it with a similar size structure that's elevated. For single-family homes, in our code, you're allowed to build in the same footprint, but the problem is on a lot of these older houses on non-conforming lots, so in R2, that's less than 4,000 square foot lot, and in R1, that's less than 5,000, you have really bizarre side setbacks. Like this one that we did a variance on recently, the existing structure had a side setback of less than a foot. And then it just didn't really have much. It was a very tiny, I think it was like less than 1,000 square foot house. So what the applicant had to do, they had to apply for a variance. So that's an $1,800 fee, and that can add an extra 30 to 45 days out because we only do a special magistrate hearing once a month. The variance he applied for was he maintained the 5-foot side setback, which is the minimum for R2 on the side. We did do a variance because the lot is kind of a irregular shape where it's 4 foot here, but he kept it straight so it's more than 5 foot for the remainder. And then he matched up the rear setback with his neighbor properties, and then he maintained the existing non-conforming front setback. So this is what he had to do to be able to build a new home on a non-conforming size lot. And we've been just dealing with a lot of that. We have some upcoming variances for two duplexes that are on these kind of irregularly shaped lots where they, with duplexes and triplexes, in rebuilding after catastrophic loss, it says you have to meet the front setback, but in a lot of cases that's not possible, so then they have to apply for a variance. And then they also include some other setbacks because they wanted to make the footprint more usable. So the problem is, like, when they have to do the variance, it adds $1,800 if it's like single family or duplex, or $2,000 if it's more than that, units than that. And that can add on additional time to the building permit process.
And so all that for Andrew, what he's basically getting at is even new builds are having similar issues with the nonconformities. I don't want to cut you off, but just that's why we're touching the nonconformity section in general as well, because it affects new builds and elevations as well. But the quicker route is the moving structure one, we believe. So that one will directly impact elevated homes while we continue to work with the issues with like the new builds, like Andrea was discussing. Any more related to, I kind of want to do single family stuff that you want us to discuss? I don't know that we need to mire you guys down with our code in the particulars of where it's located and everything like that. We have issues. We're identifying the areas we need to fix, trying to figure out how to expedite them. I don't want to overkill the nuances of our code. So.
Do we have any public comment?
Hi, Nikki Resnick. I was one of the examples of 14024 Vivian. I appreciate you all addressing this, trying to expedite this. We didn't even realize we were outside of the buildable area. I just have a couple questions. I guess the first question is the intent to make a change? So as homes are elevating with these changing times, with more of these storms, making the homes more sustainable and safe, are we going to be able to make changes to these codes to make them more modern? Because again, we want to invest equity into our house and not just have to slap stickers on the side or on the back to make it, we want to have.
So let me just
equity.
jump in real quick. So we can't do a Q&A.
Okay.
So, but if you would make your comments, then the commission may opt to discuss those
Got it.
with city
Okay.
staff.
Thank you for clarifying that. I would then strongly urge the commission to consider changing the codes to be more modern and making elevation accessible and homes equitable, and not stay stagnant in these outdated codes that just don't conform to elevated homes, especially as more of these disasters are happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment?
May I hand this? I just have some, I don't know the easiest way to hand this out to the commissioner.
City clerk.
Oh, there we go.
Mayor, can she go ahead and proceed?
Yes, could you
Would
go
like me
ahead?
to? Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners, city staff, and neighbors. My name is Carolina Lead. I live at 6350 Third Palm Point on St. Pete Beach. My husband is a local builder. We own Trinity Carpentry together, and I'm a representative for our clients and residents of Madeira Beach. Thank you so much for the opportunity for us to speak tonight, and most importantly, thank you so much for your continued commitment to helping this community recover, rebuild, and move forward after the devastation so many of us have faced. I'm here on behalf of our homeowner, but also as a voice for so many of our neighbors and friends here, trying to rebuild responsibly, affordably, and in a way that reflects the real conditions of living in a community made up of older homes, smaller lots, and a growing need for storm resilience. And that is why I'm here tonight, to share a perspective I believe many here on Madeira Beach can relate to. I've broken it down to a few key points to speak about tonight for the challenges that we're facing and to offer up some ideas. Number one, Madeira Beach's unique housing landscape, which was discussed. The average home in Madeira Beach was built in 1965 with 25% dating back to the 1940s and 50s. These homes were designed for a different era, on small, irregularly shaped lots that often do not fit modern building styles. Applying today's rigid setback and footprint standards to yesterday's homes unintentionally punishes residents simply trying to rebuild safely and resiliently. Case in point, if you take a look at what I handed out, this is our client's home. You see the existing site plan. The home is 35 feet wide. The new construction proposal we have is actually 30 feet wide. And the home would be grandfathered in to go to 25 feet from the water's edge of the seawall, but we can only use that small portion next to the pool. I circled the area that the new home would encroach in, and that's why we would have to attempt a variance, but you can see the problems that we are now facing. Number two, rebuilding for resilience, not just renovation. So we have spent months researching solutions that are fiscally responsible and aligned with the state and FEMA's goals, elevate, protect, and future-proof homes. So our choice, Steel Homes, is prefab steel frame, not wood, a solution designed and approved by the state of Florida to withstand wind rates of 178 miles per hour and tailored to fit Madeira Beach lot sizes while preserving the character of this community. Number three, a common sense compromise. Our pre-approved design fits our lot. If setbacks can be measured from the actual property line on all four sides, including the water side. We're simply asking the city to allow flexibility here, to use our land safely and reasonably, not to exceed density, but to make smart use of what already exists. Number 4, a solution for the broader community. This is not just about our family, the clients that we're working with. Prefab homes offer real benefits for many Madeira Beach residents. They're faster builds that can be done in months rather than waiting years for this to be accomplished. The lower cost, construction costs for new construction, you're looking at $600, $700, $800 a square foot possibly. So a 1,500 square foot home could end up costing people $2 million by the time it's all said and done, to be elevated, of course. Median incomes, as you would know, Madeira Beach, $83,000, Florida, $72,000, Pinellas County, $70,000, just to put it in perspective of what people are going through right now. Number 5, compassion and practicability after disaster. We acknowledge ordinances cannot be based on personal hardship, but it's impossible to ignore that our community was hit by a 100-year storm, resulting in a nationally declared disaster. Many of us are still struggling to recover. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. And finally, number 6, our specific ask. Reassess what reasonable use means when evaluating variance requests. Allow flexibility in setbacks, especially on waterfront lots and where the setbacks are measured from. Permit new structures that do not exactly replicate existing footprints. You could see in my example there that odd shape of this property compared to a normal rectangle, new construction home. If you need any supporting documents, of course, I can present that to you. I can give you any other information that you need. I just really want to thank you. One other note, if I may, from our engineer. He pointed out that the variance/administration waiver, that there is a line there that I'm sure Joe could help us with, where it says that there's an exception made for structures that are more equipped to handle natural disasters, which a state-approved steel home would actually fall in line with. So I thank you for your time and your consideration, and I hope that we can get people back in their homes.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment? Okay, then we'll close public comment. Commission, if I could go first, I would just like to, I just want to make sure that everybody here understands that what you're presenting to us is indeed to make changes so that to our codes, so that we can help this process move along. And you offered us 2 options. One was a really long road that has to go to the Planning Commission. We have to do 2 readings. We could fast track that, but it's still going to take quite a bit of time. The other is to change an old ordinance, which we could vote on here, which we were talking about today, so we potentially could vote on that at our next meeting, and that would give you a option or an avenue to be able to move some of these permits for the lifts particularly forward.
Mayor, that's not correct. If we're going to change the code, whether it's the land development code or the code of ordinances, it requires an ordinance. It requires 2 public hearings. The paths that are being presented to you today is change the code of ordinances, only requires 2 public hearings.
Right.
Change the land development code, requires a public hearing before your planning commission, 2 public hearings here. You're cutting out about 30 to 45 days because you're not dealing with the planning commission.
Correct.
So
That is what I was trying to say. I know we have to do
2
the
hearings.
meetings, right?
Okay.
But we could potentially have call a special meeting. So we don't have to wait a month or 2 months to do, correct? If we were going to do an ordinance, just an ordinance, and we had our first meeting and we voted on that ordinance and it passed, couldn't we call a special meeting the very next week and vote on it again?
we need 10 days notice. Actually, your code requires more than that. I think it's 15 days notice between the meetings so that you have, well, your code requires that more notice. So we have to have the second reading noticed at least 15 days prior to the actual hearing taking place.
So the first reading needs how many days' notice?
None.
We could just do it. We just need 15 days between one to the next.
Well, you can notice it 15 days in advance and you can shorten the time in between. So as long as it's noticed 15 days in advance of the adoption way in there,
Right.
there doesn't have to be exactly 15 days in between each hearing.
I'm not looking to cheat the system, but I am looking to allow the planning department to put in place a option that they have found that would be beneficial to the homeowners that are trying to lift their homes and rebuild. But still, obviously, I want to stay, want us to do it legally, but I want to do it, or I want to propose that we do it in the quickest legal way we possibly could, based off of staff's recommendation for what they would want us to, what they would recommend changing that would help the residents.
Understood.
Yes, I'll just stop right there.
Eddie?
The way I'm looking at this, it's twofold. One is the restrictions on setbacks and whatnot that we are trying to address with stairs in the front or the rear or the side, that sort of thing. So that's more what the mayor's speaking of. The other thing is the timeliness of how you have so many hours in your department, even though you've hired 3 additional staff, I believe, for review. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we're just at the beginning of this. This is going to snowball, and that list that was provided early in on the meeting just for the elevated homes is 22. It's going to go out. By the time you start getting the new builds, I know where we live, there's demos going on every day, as fast as they can get them done. So we know the load's coming. I'm thinking that we need to address how we are applying for the permits. I know it's all electronically, but through what you've seen, you have to have a list of what I'll call the frequent comments, not FAQs, but frequent comments. So if those frequent comments could be somehow put into, let's have the check boxes before you ever submit, make sure these check boxes are checked, whether that's, oh, I didn't get, you didn't calculate your FAR, I need to see the longhand, how you did that. Your setbacks, whatever those comments are, I'm sure you're seeing repeat comments over and over again. Anytime we can get those addressed before the application even comes in, I would think that the percentage of approved first round review would be increased. I do know that just from dialogue that the Reddingtons and I'm sure other communities have made adjustments on their setbacks as far as their stairs. I know you talk professionally and what they've done and what they've not done, so just to get input of thoughts behind that, I encourage that. And then lastly, I think via email, we discussed metrics, how are we doing? Are we improving the average time that it takes to, as a resident, what can I expect? I'm going to elevate my home. I know I'm going to go into some setbacks or whatever, or maybe I'm not. At best case, my stairs are coming up underneath my home, and I don't have any issue with setbacks because I'm going straight up. What can I expect is it going to be 4 to 6 weeks? Is it really going to be more? Those metrics, I know the city manager, he does basically at least once a month, I think it's weekly, basically, of, you know, how many's been processed and that sort of thing. But if we had the metrics that there's certain planning that needs to be done. You know, you talk to some residents and they haven't been able to get permits for whatever reason. I'm not, you guys are awesome, don't get me wrong. But, you know, they're telling me stories about losing insurance because we couldn't get our permit, you know, their flood insurance because they couldn't get their permit at a time. So there's financial hardships that I know you're all aware of. I'm asking how can we help you, or how can the residents help you get all those boxes checked so that when you go through a review, you're not sitting there for hours doing calculations. Maybe the permit is passed based on some calculations you have. Show me your work, your longhand, and then if it's not accurate, well, you know, we're going to do the longhand sooner or later, but we need to get some houses elevated and permits. That's all you hear is it's either insurance or it's permits. That's when you walk around town. That's what the complaints are. So
Yeah, for sure. So recently we just put together a detailed, so we've always had a checklist on our website for these are all the documents that are required based on the type of permit. Recently, I'm talking like a week or two ago, we put together a detailed checklist for elevations and new construction.
Great.
And that's literally when I review a permit, that's what I'm going off of. I'm going straight down that checklist. That's on our website. If anyone wants to find it, if you go to the City of Madeira Beach website and search planning and zoning, it'll pop up detailed review checklist or something like that. That's literally everything top to bottom that we're reviewing for on a new build and an elevate. And even like Marcy talked about later, we're going to find ways that we can try and take some of those requirements off for the elevation projects if different contractors are doing different things. But one way or another, everything on that list is everything that we look for. Also, I want to add that we found that people that set up pre-applications meetings or even after the fact application meetings, just meetings with the city to go over your permit application, that's the best possible thing you could do to help on your end to get the permit across the finish line. Because then you set up a meeting, we're forced to stop what we're doing and focus on your project and everything that we can do to get that across the finish line. So we've seen significant higher quality of permit applications for people that set up the meetings versus those that aren't interested in setting up the meetings.
And the biggest difference is, honestly, if their designer would actually look at our code. They submit plans and they'll have a 1-foot freeboard. None of the setbacks are accurate. They have shallow foundations, and that boggles me because our code is very clear, and I've been on that side submitting for site plans. The first thing I do when I get a project is I go to that Municode, I figure out what zone I'm working in, what are my setbacks. So I've been that person. So when we get some of these plans, these people got paid to design your home. They should be at a bare minimum. The code should at least be reflected in the first submission I see from a designer. So that's the first question you need to ask everybody you're working with. Did you go to the Madeira Beach Municode? This is not specific. This is throughout everywhere. This is common throughout. Florida has a really good Municode system, but throughout the U.S. That's the first question. And second, do not hire a surveyor who is not from here. We had a survey that came in and they just didn't do it correctly. I don't even know if they visited the site, but the survey's not correct. The flood zone they're in is not correct. And it was critical because they're actually in a coastal A, which changes the elevation of where they have to be. Use local people, make sure your designer goes to the code. And if those things are there, the plan reviews really go a lot more easy. We have a plan up, Andrew, if you'll show the sheet that we pulled up. And this is just an example, and I'm not picking on anybody when I show this example. We have our struggles, and the designers have their struggles, but when this comes in as a site plan, I don't know what the old house is, what the new house is, I'm left sitting there trying to decipher all of this, and it needs to be clean, clear, easy to review. If you'll go to the second page. Oh, sorry, the whole thing's in here. Keep going. Anyways, you go through this plan set. They don't tell you the height above the ground. They don't show you where the base flood elevation is. They don't show you where the design flood elevation is, and it's on shallow foundations. So pretty quickly, we kicked it back. Said, this is insufficient for review. Please visit our code. We sent them the code links. They resubmitted, same exact issues. So that's a lot of the times is encourage your neighbors who are doing these to please use somebody local, please review our code. It helps so much because then sometimes we can just approve. If you made a few light errors, we can just correct those and say, hey, no biggie, move on with construction, and we can issue those permits. The mayor came in, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I showed her a plan set that I approved, but it had about 7 conditions on it, which isn't ideal, but it helps get you guys moving. So that's the real big takeaway for me and one of the key things that I would tell everybody in the community. And as far as expediting stuff, so we are working with Al. He's going to do some CAD inserts. So we're going to have some standard details for the city of Madeira Beach. As part of that, we're going to have like site data tables that we're going to give to the designer to insert on their cover page to fill out. So we're going to pre-do that for you. All you have to do is download it from the website. So we're doing those types of things that will pretty quickly help expedite the review process. But if we have to keep looking at some of these plans, that's what just really bogs you down is that part of it. So the better the product that comes to us, and to Joe's point, the meetings that we have go a long way. But if you have bad data, you make bad plans, and then you end up in this circle. And it's expensive. And that's why I tell the team, every time you say, hey, can you correct this and send it back, that costs somebody money. So let's be thoughtful about our comments and make sure they really count, or can we just put a note on the plans? So.
That's all good. I mean, the better the application,
Yes.
it helps everybody.
Exactly. And so we are going to start providing kind of spoon feeding some of that stuff. Like I said, site data table, we're going to give that to you. You just plug it in and fill it out for your project. So we are moving towards doing that, creating standard details as well, like a lot of other municipalities have. That is what's going to help expedite the review, is when we open it up, it's clean, easy to review. They're in the right flood zone. Their base flood elevation is correct. The freeboard's correct. That stuff is really what helps expedite it. So.
Perfect. And the checklist is already there. I love it.
Yeah,
Great.
and just to add on to what Marcy said, a lot of people think, oh, well, can you just hire more people? And on paper, that sounds like the solution, but and the contractors know this better than anyone. Pinellas County has at least, I think, like 24 different municipalities. That's 24 different codes you have to know. And the issue with the delayed permits is primarily coming from the planning and zoning more than the building side of it. And that's because you have to know Madeira Beach code, and that whether you're submitting the plans or you're reviewing them. So for us to hire someone, yes, we have additional help from Al, which is fantastic, but there's a huge learning curve with learning our code because nobody's going to come in knowing the code. If we hire people for building, that's different because Florida building code is the same throughout the state, but nobody knows Madeira Beach code unless you've worked here.
And
Thank you.
another thing is I ran some reports today, so what I'm going to commit to doing as well is every Friday afternoon, I'm going to run a report for our elevation permits and our new house permits. Monday morning, I'm going to meet with the team, and whoever's resubmitted, I'm going to visually go through and check that stuff and see if I can get them back up in front of Joe's review, if he's reviewing it, or Al's review, and kind of start prioritizing those based on my assessment on Friday. So Monday morning, we hit the ground running, and I know that Thursday night at midnight, somebody resubmitted some plans. I can immediately get those in front of Al to quickly turn around. So we're going to start doing that a little more aggressively now that we've, as part of our learning curve as well, and how to best utilize our software system too.
So so to go back to this particular topic we're on, which is nonconformances, variances, and open sky requirements. The recommendation from the city staff is to bring back draft amendments revising. Will you be ready to bring that to our next meeting? Is that something that you would be ready to present to us if we did a special meeting? I mean, we've had a great conversation, and I feel the pain because I come in and I understand that there are some people who submit a plan and they can review it in 45 minutes. And there are some plans that come in that take hours, and then they're not right. It takes them hours to go through and do all of the comments and everything. So I've seen those. I personally said sort by name and pull the people up that do their plans right and approve all theirs, and then let the people who don't do it right wait. I mean, I kind of do mean that, because if you do it right, you should be rewarded. if you know that this company, their stuff's going to be a 45-minute review, but that being said, where exactly do you want to go from here today on this so that we can give you our buy-in to be able to take the next step?
So I would like to focus on Chapter 14 and working with the city attorney to, confirm we're headed in the right direction and we can do exactly what we want to do, and work on the verbiage to insert into that and bring you guys something at the next meeting that you can start looking at and weighing in on. Identifying the section was great to be able to do, to find that, and I think the verbiage we can use to Commissioner Kerr's point, we'll be able, I've already started plucking from other municipalities who've been up against the same thing and have done similar stuff. Though their code's different, our verbiage will have to be specific to our code and how it works, but I do believe by next meeting we can present you guys with an ordinance that we can start sinking our teeth into.
So what I hear, and I just want to make sure, is we want to change this one, but you still want to do the land development code change and take that through the full process of the planning, which would long-term be the best benefit for the community.
Yep, 110%. So
Okay.
simultaneously, we're going to be working on both, yes.
So if she were to get with you, Attorney Trask, and you crafted an ordinance for us to talk about, does the first time we read it have to have a notice, or can it just be noticed in normal and?
It does not require
Okay.
a publication.
Okay,
So we still have to notice the meeting and what's going to be in the meeting, and that's going to be at the meeting, so, but it doesn't require a publication.
so we potentially could have that ordinance at our next meeting, because we've discussed it here today.
Well, you haven't discussed details, and that's the important part of this ordinance, is are you going to completely waive front yard setbacks or side yard setbacks? Are you going to do it a certain percentage? Are you going to allow stairways there? Are you going to require the stairways to be wood? Or are you going to require them to be concrete? What is the height limit you're going to provide? Is it going to have to turn left or right as it goes into the front of the building? It's not just an easy fix. And so, and this is the first I've heard of it today. But to answer your question, it doesn't require a publication, but we can work on it as quickly as we possibly can to get it to you for your first meeting. But it's going to require discussion, and I wouldn't come to that meeting thinking it's going to be, okay, we're going to approve it.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of meat there that you're going to
Yeah.
have to really consider, so.
So I mean, I know that we normally discuss things in a workshop. Could we discuss it in our next regular meeting and just have it as a discussion item? I mean, it's different than how we normally do things, but there's nothing preventing us from doing that.
That's correct. You
Okay.
can take as much time as you want on each agenda item at your regular meeting. You want to hash it out, and maybe we present you an ordinance and you want to make changes to it, and we'll bring it back to second reading with the changes in it. And if they're not substantive, then that's all that's going to be required. If they are going to be substantive, it's going to require a third public hearing.
Okay,
Yeah.
Commissioner?
Could we propose a special workshop at 4 o'clock prior to our regular meeting?
That doesn't give us enough time to make
Yeah.
the changes that you're suggesting at 4 o'clock for the 6 o'clock meeting.
Right.
No, I'm not talking about voting on it on the 6 o'clock meeting. I'm talking about at least have an opportunity to discuss it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You're talking about just kind of workshopping it in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, we
Right.
would have a 5 o'clock meeting, we'd workshop that one particular topic.
Right.
And then if we could come to an agreement on an ordinance, then we could schedule the first reading for the next.
At least we'd be ahead of the game.
I would not be opposed to that. I would. and
However
2
the
weeks-
next step works, I'm not
Right.
sure, but at least we'd be ahead of the game.
I mean, because we could do whatever the commission decides in meetings for, as long as we meet that 14-day window for the second reading, correct?
Correct.
Right. Do you think 2 weeks would be enough for you to work with Attorney Trask and?
I think we'll be able to get a skeletal idea of
Okay.
what we want to touch on, what we think is critical to touch on to get us moving, and then we're going to have to wordsmith it after that. But I think we can, to Trask's point, it is an undertaking, so I definitely don't want to come across like it's going to be easy, but it's really important. And so I know that we've got to do something, and I know everybody's committed on the team to do that. So we will do everything we can to facilitate the best possible draft for discussion, and we will just hash it out then, but we'll come to the table with everything we can possibly have ready.
Well, I mean, we have outdated stuff. I don't want to rush something and it not be
Correct.
what would be best for for what the city wants and for what the community needs.
And what
So-
happens too is once we do start hashing it out, we do end up realizing that there's more to it, but at least we've got the conversation started. The community knows we're hashing it out and we're heading in a progressive direction.
I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. Commission, any other comments?
Yes. Thank you, everyone that came out tonight. Definitely appreciate it up here. Also, Carolina, thank you very much for your information. Feel really encouraged by the fact that the community came out tonight in front of the board, and we can work together to solve our problems and our issues. And this will help us in the future in case something else happens. So it's really encouraging for that. And the discussion tonight basically was what potential amendments could be adopted to help speed up and simplify the rebuilding process or elevating the process of property owners who want to elevate their homes. What can we do in the future to make it simpler and easier for everyone? And I think tonight is a great step towards coming together and bringing up the ideas and talking about them and changing some of the outdated codes or ordinance that we could fix. So thank you very much.
Would I be able to clarify something about the land development regulation, the Article 3 nonconformances and the Section 110-427? We are bringing these as discussion items to the planning commission, upcoming planning commission meeting in July. Since we've gotten your feedback today and we'll get the feedback from the plan commission, most likely we'd be bringing like a rough draft of that or at the July BOC workshop. So that's going to be a more midterm solution that's going to take a little more time because it has to do the three public hearings, one plan commission, and then the 2 BOC readings. And then Forward Pinellas has to review that one too because they review our LDRs. So that'll be more of a midterm solution, but I just wanted to clarify that we are bringing it as a discussion item to the upcoming plan commission.
Yeah, and one other thing, Mayor, I think that some direction, are we really just dealing with the issues of ingress, egress for these raised homes? Are we talking about dealing with side yard setbacks or front yard setbacks to, for example, square off homes, provide more livable space? I mean, what are we actually doing? Because if it's staircases, it's one thing. If it's additional living space, squaring off a building that is outside the footprint of, what it looks like right now, that's another thing. And I want to make sure that we're working on what you want us to work on. But I think the key here is all these issues really don't have to do with the square footage of the home. They really have to do with access.
Correct.
And so I think that the focus right now for these homes that are being raised is the access issue. And correct me if I'm wrong, Marcy, is that the issue that we're trying to solve right now? It's not, for example, I heard tonight this home that had this weird configuration, and if you squared it off this way, it's a lot more usable by the property owner. But I didn't think that that's really what we were talking about today.
Yeah, I think that's gonna come with the LDRs and going to be a much bigger conversation. So to Attorney Trask's point is the priority for us is at a minimum, I want to be able to provide people reasonable access to their home and allow for our code to give that to people within the square foot of the home that they're elevating. So that's our biggest challenge, and typically it's coming in the front yard. So I think that is our priority. We cannot fix everything within what we have, but what we can help do is facilitate homes being elevated. And if down the road they want to add a rear yard balcony or front yard balcony or those types of things, that will have to be done in the LDRs. Our priority right now is getting your home elevated, reasonably elevated, and giving you access to it, and that's how I feel. And I think this section of the code could probably is the best to be used just for a topic like that. I don't know that you want to go too crazy in this particular section with too much like that,
Right.
but the flexibility I think can be put in there for access.
So that is what I understood from our conversations.
Okay, excellent,
That
yes.
this would be, and the other would have to go through the LDR.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And
All right, thank you, that
yeah.
helps.
I just have one more comment. You had mentioned earlier about scope. I don't know if I addressed it before. Is there a place on the application that really outlines what the scope is?
On
Like on MGL, on the permit application, or
Yeah, you're doing an elevation. To Marcy's comment, you're doing a
Yeah,
slab
that-
or you're not. You're doing footings or you're not. You
That-
know, you're
yeah,
running
that's
pilings or you're
something-
not.
That's something we want to get more clear from the applicants on the elevation and really our system. So right now, really, there's a spot for you to put a project description. We're trying to work out the kinks on how we can have some kind of checklist or of, all right, here's everything you need, and then let us know which contractor is doing the elevate, which contractor is doing the access. We don't have that yet. That's something we're working on. So right now, the best thing we could say is give us a detailed project description.
But that's something you can work on, that checklist that you were referring to.
It would be similar to the checklist. So the checklist that I was referring to that's on our website, that's everything we look for. So all of that needs to be there. But
But on an Elevate application, basically, here's a checklist. This is what this permit application is for. It doesn't address anything else. So
that would be good. Yeah, that's one possibility. Like maybe they can go down our detailed checklist and say, okay, we're doing the ones with the X, and then the ones with the circle are going to be done by this contractor, and then the ones with the triangle are going to be done by this
right,
contractor.
that's a separate permit application.
It depends how they want to do it. So the elevate structures, we're still trying to work through the kinks on that, but if someone's elevating a structure and doing all of the work, they can do that all under one permit. There's no issue with that. But the issue we're running into is we have contractors that are just elevating. They don't want to be held responsible for the other work that's required. So that would need to be a
You should see
separate
that
permit.
on page 1, though. Okay, this is what I'm reviewing.
Exactly, and to his point, I've been working on a checklist that basically says elevation contractor responsibility, and I've listed everything, and they get to check, and it's other contractor responsibility. That way, too, it also reiterates to the homeowner, the elevating contractor is going to do this, and the other things that are critical that will still have to be done. Then you may have a carpenter who only wants to do the stairs and the balcony. Somebody else wants to do your interior remodel, and you're going to get another guy to do your infill for your garage. Those could easily all be separate permits. And that's kind of where some of the juggling and the coordination and the conversation comes in. So if you already have an elevation permit coming in, I will be calling your contractor and clarifying, are you doing the slab? Are you doing the infill? And I am adding those for the ones we currently have. The ones moving forward, we're pushing to get explicitly as a lifting contractor, what are you doing? So.
Great, thank you.
Any further comments?
Yes. To Commissioner McGee's point, neighborhood participation is really important. We're really enjoying having you all in here and enjoying listening to you. Or obviously, as you see, our goal and desire is to help our neighborhood get to where they need to be. We have a wonderful staff. I mean, just listen to them. They're just really advanced. Thank you. Yes. So while we go through the next, I guess, workshop, we hopefully Marcy and Joe maybe can bring to us as far as what would be a desirable site setback that could also meet the fire department requirements. You know, you have to worry about that. And also neighbors, you know, in the process and pursuit of helping folks rebuild, we don't want to be adversely affecting the next door neighbors. So it's important to keep that in mind. Now, personally, I would say, and I think our attorney brought this up, we should be quantifying, you know, what you would be bringing before the board. In other words, would you recommend 5-foot setback for, you know, for site setbacks?
We have that 4-foot of freeboard above, FEMA and design flood elevation. What would be the maximum height, the setbacks? What would you do with the non-conforming? I think we should probably try to make them as conforming as possible, but maybe we should put a language in there to, in some cases, terminate the non-conforming and make it conforming, even though it may not meet a certain regulation. So, and having addressed the zoning code, also there is this thing called third-party provider, right? So the residents could take their plans, once the zoning part of it is approved, they can submit that to a third-party provider to review their plans, and, obviously there's a cost to that, but you may get a quicker response from them just because we may be overloaded. I know they're also overloaded. I know what you're going to say, Marcy. So, but just want to put it out there that there is another mechanism called third-party provider if you want to submit it to another agency to review the building plans. That option is also available. So, thank you.
Can I clarify something? So in a single-family residential structure, we have no jurisdiction in the fire and life safety aspect. That will fall under the Florida Building Code, just for transparency.
Thank you,
I
Chief.
think, one of the only caveats that Kathy had mentioned is because, like, he brought up there was a house that was 0.5 feet from the property line. The eave lines, like, can't be any closer than 3 feet, and those things would kind of are due to fire but are in the Florida Building Code. So those are some of the things that we would have to take into consideration, to your point. And as for private providers, it's been kind of hit or miss. We do still have to do a building review, so that it will go through building, but it won't be peer reviewed. So some of the time savings can be there, but it is an option.
Thank you. Anything? Okay, then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is add ordinance language for unsafe structures.
Okay, so this was obviously working with post-storm. We have a lot of buildings that were damaged. I'll let them go ahead and leave. I'll get my space here real quick. Thank you guys for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Have a nice evening. I think it stopped raining for you too, so that's even better. Okay, so this was brought kind of to my attention by the building official, in so much that our code really only addresses unfit structures and not unsafe, and there is a nuance to them. Unfit could be infested, not have utilities running to it, but it doesn't mean the structure is about to collapse. Unsafe means it poses a risk, and we do have at least probably more, but I know for sure one structure I've seen that I would really like to have something to sink our teeth into to get the homeowner to move on it. We've communicated with them. They're not really being proactive, and we don't have anything in our code to facilitate it through the special magistrate. So that's why you're seeing this. I will work with Kathy to get the verbiage, but I showed you where in our code we would be placing it and giving you some examples of it. So for us, it's pretty straightforward. It gives us an opportunity to sink our teeth into some stuff with the unsafe structures.
Do we have any public comment?
Again, my name is Jeremy Patterson. I'm the president of Modern. I do want to tell you your staff is phenomenal, right, by all means. The private provider aspect does not work in areas that are below base flood elevation in the state ordinance. So the aspect of a private provider where you're saying cut out the plane, it can't affect us in areas below base flood elevation, just so we're all on the same page.
Do we have any additional public comment? Commissioners, comments?
No, this is very important. I'm just, what are we suggesting here? Drafting amendments, but the amendments aren't here, right?
They're not in
Okay.
there. Literally, this kind of got really flagged and brought up the day before everything had to be posted, so I kind of put it together pretty quickly with examples. We have not provided you any verbiage that we're looking at, but that will be forthcoming. So yeah, we'll get that to you. but there's, yeah, nothing proposed specifically in here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. There's homes out there that are, and I think I know which one you're speaking of, but there's others that haven't been cleared out. You could not habitate in those homes, just strictly for mold, if no other reason.
And ones that may be unfit now after this type of weather and wind that we're getting are going to grow to be unsafe if they're left like this. So we need something like this.
You're going to come up with how do you depend on neighbors to flag these homes, or how do you flag these homes?
No, so code enforcement can identify them. The one that we're really concerned about was through our building official in the community. She came back and she said, you know what, we've reached out to them. They're not doing this. So she's being very proactive. So it'll be part of our code enforcement rounds. Like I said, building officials catching a lot of this stuff. So she's being very proactive with this. So that's how it will be. But we'll also gladly take any neighbor, or citizen complaints as well, for sure.
Okay.
But we need to make sure that if anybody is making a complaint as to a code violation, their name and address must be given, and it will become part of the public record.
That's why you'd likely see a lot of Robin Gomez 300 Municipal Drive.
I mean, I don't have an issue with that. Marcy, we talked about it one day because I was asking about the question that we've all heard so many times is, why doesn't the city do something about that house? Why doesn't the city board it up? Why doesn't the city tear it down? Because our code doesn't allow us to do any of that. And this is possibly something that would allow us to board up a house, charge it to the homeowner. We may never get paid until the land sells, but when the land sells, we'll get paid. So it would be, there are several homes that are issues.
Just a reminder that there are going to be certain circumstances you won't get paid at all. If it's homesteaded property, the lien will never attach. It'll be recorded, but it'll have to become non-homesteaded property before we'll be able to collect any money on that. Okay.
Correct, yes. Any additional comments?
Isn't there a way that you'd be able to prove that? To be a homestead, you have to live there 6 months.
No, you do not. You do not have to live in the house. You don't even have to sleep in it. The only thing you have to do to homestead, and I take this from our tax assessor, the only thing you have to comply with to homestead a piece of property is it is your primary residence, and you do not claim a primary residence in any other place other than that home, period.
Yes.
Primary resident, isn't that defined as
That's
6
homestead.
months or more?
No, not in the state of Florida.
Then how's it not primary? How is it primary if
Your
you live there
driver's,
less than
if your
anywhere
driver's
else?
license is designated to that property, that's your primary residence.
Your
And you
voter
can homestead it.
registration.
Your voter registration, and that's your house.
Okay.
You don't even have to live, listen,
I give.
I know, because I don't think it's fair. But that's a legislative issue, but I don't think it's fair because somebody comes into our town, buys a house, homesteads it, they don't stay here, they reap all the benefits, and then they live somewhere else that doesn't offer that type of benefit. Don't get me started.
I guess I'm citing IRS.
Yeah, yeah.
And
There is a federal law, too. It's called the Soldiers and Sailors Relief Act of 1934, and it basically is protecting those people that own homes and they're overseas, protecting our country somewhere, and they are not going to be back for years on end. So anyhow,
Okay.
I think we all understand that it needs to be non-homesteaded property for us to collect it. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, next on the agenda is hurricane permit update.
So we just provided here what we post to the website. I did set up a meeting with Barb to go over some of the reporting. I do want to add get some clarification to some stuff. So I am hoping to have a little more metrics to provide. So we will try to kind of I know the time delay is a real big one. I know we address it as a whole. I would like to maybe start putting a little more information to that too. So we are going to meet and start seeing what we can do to provide a little more detailed information on timeframes and stuff like that.
Do we have any public comment? Commission, comments, questions?
None.
None? Then next on the agenda is the Ford F-250. So the commission approved the purchase of a Ford F-250, excuse me, for $55,411.40. There was $60,000 budgeted for it. And what brought this vehicle to my attention was it did not have a city logo on it. So for months, the vehicle drove in the city and was not marked. I've subsequently found 2 other vehicles that did not have city emblems on them either, and I inquired to Robin about it and was told that they were going to wrap the truck and it would happen. It took it 2 or 3 more weeks before it did. So then I'm just hyper-focused on this vehicle, and then one day somebody says something to me, wow, that truck looks like a race truck. And so I requested the invoices for things that had been done to the vehicle. And the original truck came with options on it for the $55,000, which to me, I can't tell the difference of what that means. But the thing that did come to me that mattered, and I found it, I personally have a real issue with it, is the city paid $1,256 to remove the stock wheels, paint them black, flip so any white lettering is on the inside, mountain balance. I listen to people talk about us wasting money and doing things, and I don't understand how it is not a flagrant misuse of public funds to spend almost $1,300 on a aesthetic. There is nothing about that money that has anything to do with driving that vehicle. It is an aesthetic. Then the next item that was placed on the vehicle was a Lear commercial topper that was $3,056. And a host of other accessories that totaled up to $4,556.50. The accessories are fiberglass inserts, stainless steel drop T-handles, toolbox accessories. Then the next item that was purchased was for $2,700, a cargo glide for the back of the truck. Then there was $192.19 spent on floor coverings, mats, $731.94 spent on bolt covers and runners to go down the side to step on, $3,589.54 for a light bar, $398.94 for the wiring harness for that light bar. So they spent a total of $14,300.11. And some of that may be needed, but one of the things that I learned in spending time at the city is that the city manager requires the parking department to unload their vehicle every night so that there is nothing in the bed of the truck. And knowing that, I don't understand why that wouldn't be a requirement for every department in the city. And if there had been a logo placed on the truck when they bought it, I probably wouldn't have paid it any attention. And when somebody said something to me about it, I probably would have said, oh, well, that's the way it came, because I wouldn't have known any different. However, because I wanted to know how much they paid to put the vinyl on the truck, which was $894, because I think it was 94, I think I'm exact on that number. But because I wanted to know that is how I found all of these other things. And it leaves me to think, if you would waste money like this, where else are we wasting money? And what else is going on that we don't know about? And I felt like I always do when I have something. I've brought it to y'all before. When something happens, and to me, I know it, I feel like that it is my responsibility as a commissioner on this board to share what I know with the commission. And I I told Robin, Robin was unaware, he told me, of any of these purchases. So I wanted that in the sunshine because I just don't think it's right by any stretch. And it's not about bidding things out. It's about, let me just follow up. The parking department purchased a light bar for their truck and their parking attendants. And that light bar that they purchased for this truck, that's not even installed. They took a brand-new truck and ripped or took the dash out and took the seats out to be able to install wiring. So the labor for the install is not even in any of the charges. And the parking department purchased lights for a vehicle, front, back, and top, and all in installed, it's less than $2,200. So when my words to Robin was that the new recreation vehicle's been pimped out. I mean, it's sharp, it's fancy, and I just think it's a waste of money. And I don't appreciate that it was done.
So Mayor and Commission, obviously we don't work here to waste money, and I will go through this and Jay will add, this was not a waste of money, and the mayor does not have all of the information. And I did mention to her, let me get the information, get that back to you, copy all of you, then, but if we'll deal it here and I'll go through what we have and Jay will add. The tires that were mentioned were for a different vehicle. For number 20. I don't have that invoice, but we will get that data. It was not for this vehicle. Jay, if you want to add regarding the tires for the Ford. Before Jay goes to that, up on the screen, this vehicle was approved as a purchase back in November of 2024, Ford F-250 Crew Cab XL purchase. It is part of the Duval Ford, part of a Bradford County Sheriff's Office contract to purchase the vehicle. The city budgeted $65,000 for the purchase of the vehicle. If you read up on the screen, the background in the agenda item, it goes on to stipulate, as I stated, the purchase is budgeted at $65,000. Toward the bottom, the unit price of the 2020 Ford F-250 is $55,411.40, which is what the city paid for the Ford F-250 Crew Cab XL. If you read in between what I just stated and the top of that paragraph, it states about the third or fourth sentence, the truck will be outfitted with a topper and rear slide-out storage, and it goes on to explain to ensure city cones and equipment is protected from the elements, yet still accessible for use as needed. What the agenda item does not state is that those two are additional purchases. Acknowledge that that should be clear, and we should be explaining what we are spending when we are buying a piece of equipment. So that was not listed on here. We'll go into some of the details. As I said, Jay will go on about the tires. Or Jay, if you want to add about the tires that have been referenced by the mayor.
Yes, excuse me, the tires were purchased as a replacement for the 4 tires on truck 20. They had dry rotted sometime around the storm, so they needed to be replaced. The preference of how they were put on the truck, I couldn't tell you how that happened, flipped or whatnot, but that was not a discussion that was had with me. So,
but we can certainly get the paperwork related to what those
So the
tires.
invoice that Duval Ford wrote, that's where I got my information from, states that it's that new truck that they put them on. I'm just telling you what it says. It states it in 2 different places that it went on that truck.
right. So as far as all of this information and all of this that has been requested, I've heard from numerous other people within the city that this information has been discussed and requested, and this is the first time it has been discussed with me. So there's conversation professionally that I think could have been had before this came to this board to at least clear some up. I have no problem discussing it now because, again, as Robin stated, it was mentioned. I could have been more clear in my memo about it being purchased after the fact. I agree with that. The lighting, it says light bar on the memo or in the credit card recap I was able to locate that today. It is a light kit that is going to encompass the truck with lights. We use this truck for special events and park it in the middle of the street, as you've seen at the market, to block traffic. So my intention is to have as much lighting on it as possible for safety reasons. The expense of that is, I mean, $3,000 is a decent investment on that, but it is the vendor we have used for lighting, and it serves a public safety purpose. I've been in the street with cones and everything else, honked at, yelled at, almost hit by cars, so I felt it was a decent investment.
So regarding the cost of the lighting, $3,589.54 plus the cost of the kit. Of course, the lights have to be wired into the truck, so our mechanic does go through the dashboard. I don't know all the details. We can certainly ask him to provide that. That similar type of work has been done on other city vehicles, and I did share with the mayor 2 days ago when we discussed this that I did receive from parking the lights that are in a different truck. Those are Ford Mavericks, which I don't know that much about vehicles, but I believe it's a smaller vehicle. Those light bars and the installation, about $2,200, as the mayor said. So why the cost of the difference? We can figure that out, and why it was more for one than the other. Should they be the same? I don't know, but we can certainly figure that out and let you know why this one was $3,600. I don't know. Just to add, I don't know of every purchase that happens in the city. I shouldn't have to know every purchase that happens in the city. If that's the case, then we don't need the department heads out here. I don't have to rely on their professional expertise and knowledge to be able to make a purchase. I believe they are making the best possible purchase, the most efficient, the most effective. That's what we get paid to do, all of us. If you desire that I review every single purchase, we can do that, but I believe that's not really the role that should be played. As Jay stated, the topper to cover the back. I don't know whether that's a good price or not, $4,556, and if you can add anything with that, Jay.
As far as the topper and the slide out, we quoted out those purchases individually. And as far as the logo on the truck, we have the van, we have truck 20, we have the buses. There is one white bus that was also mentioned that doesn't have a logo on it, and it was overlooked.
Oversight.
That's simple as that. We're going to put a simple city seal on it. We don't want to go too fancy because the last time we did that, the website changed and it was wasted. So the timeline of this truck was we received the truck. We had to get the slide out that we got. The first one was delivered, was damaged in transit, so we sent it back. We received the second one, got it installed, and then once that was installed, the topper, I think might have been backwards, but the topper was installed as well. And then once that stuff was installed, we were in discussions to get it wrapped just down the street. So it did take longer than it should have or could have, but we had it laid out in a process to get everything installed on the truck and wrapped and completed all at once. And then now it's in the process of getting the lights. It's not to do anything on that vehicle. It physically has to go all 4 times. It had to go off-site somewhere, which is not ideal, but it's to get the truck operational. So, yeah, that's where.
So the topper, the slide out, the light bar, and the topper at $4,556, the slide out at $2,700, the emergency, the light bar, safety lights at $3,589.54, the wrap at $895 or $800, whatever that, it's just under $900. That's what has been spent on the vehicle. If there's anything, we will bring that back to you, get all the paperwork, and share all of that with you.
May I add, Ms. Mayor, it's commendable how transparent you are. It's commendable that you really, really care. You would like to save whatever monies we can. We are responsible to answer to our residents. So I just wanted to say thank you for being who you are and what you do, and you spend a lot of time, your personal time, serving this wonderful town. As far as our city manager, no, you don't have to have all the answers, but you have those department heads that can give you the answers. So when the mayor asks the question, then you can talk to your department heads and get the answer and then bring it to the mayor. We're not expecting you to be, all over the map, but, but you are, or basically executive director. We are not allowed or should not be really communicating with any staff members. We speak and communicate with you. I just want to put that out there.
Do we have any public comment? Commissioners?
Thank you for bringing this to our attention, to the board's attention. I totally agree with you bringing that up, and thank you.
I just look forward to the update. Get to the bottom of it, so.
It is important to me that when I'm asked something and I find information, and I did have a discussion with the city manager, and you were shocked when you were pulling up the pricing.
Sure.
You were. And this is no slight or no ambush on someone. This isn't me trying to be like previous administration. This is me wanting to be transparent. And I feel like if I know something, I can't keep it to myself. And the only way that I can share with this commission anything is here on the dais. Everything I say to any of you, if it has anything to do with something that we're going to vote on ever, I have to do it here. And this is the proper place to have the conversation. It is not a behind closed doors secret. It is to share and move forward. And if I have misinformation, if I have numbers that are incorrect, the invoices are incorrect, because that is what the invoices say.
We will review and get all the information, but that's what we have.
Next on the agenda is mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes, that's me. Multiple residents and myself out on Crystal Island, and I would imagine throughout the city, mosquitoes are becoming fierce, more than I've experienced since I've lived here. The only reason for that, I would believe, is, of course, there's more standing water. There's lots that have been demoed, mine included, which have standing water from the rain. Is that it? There's, I'm sure, pools that are not being kept up right now where people are not living there. But I only wanted to bring it up here. I don't know that the city has the county's ear that could request any type of spraying, but the county would have to do that. The city doesn't have the resources to do that.
Dragonflies?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
There's a mosquito control department with Pinellas County. We can reach out to them.
It's a health issue.
Yes, disease.
And I wanted to make sure it was brought to the city's attention.
They, I know one of our other neighboring communities has some real severe mosquito issues too, and I don't know how you go about it, but I know that the information I heard was that they can call, and they reached out to the county to come and spray, and then they did. There was something else, I don't remember the name of it, that they had put out for mosquito, to help. I think they throw it in pools or in something like that. I'll look it up and share with Robin what it was, but I know when I drive around the community, there are pools that are green and are just stagnant with water, and they're gone now, but there's one in particular, a house that is on 144th, and you can see the pool right through the fence when you drive around the corner. I don't know what we can do or how far we can push that, but it's clearly a mosquito bed for anybody that's living right around there. And it's clear to see. So some houses, you know, you can't see the pool in the backyard. The neighbor can see it because they can see out their second story and they can see over that the pool's like that. So you need those people to call and report it. But like this particular pool, you drive right past the house and you can see it. It's,
Well, I just
Robin,
bring
what
it up.
is
There has
the-
to be some actions that we
what
can
is the
take.
protocol for the pools? I know that code enforcement had been dealing with it, but what is the process
If
for
we
a
see
green
one, we
pool?
notify the property owner that it has to be maintained. If we see it or it's reported to
Okay,
us.
so this one I'm talking about, they have to see it because you drive right past it. So
And-
what would be the process? They would get notified and then?
It's just a code issue, right? And they have to bring it up to clean it and bring it into proper working order.
So let's use this one I saw today and that I've seen for many days. It's been like that since the storm. It's been green. So they get notified, then what happens? What's next?
Eventually, they end up in, if they don't clean it, they end up in front of the magistrate, and the
How many
magistrate finds them.
days? That's what I'm saying. I'm asking, drill down
We'll give
on
them
the
15
process.
days to take care of it, follow up 15 days, or 7 to 15 days after that. Then they're sent summons to come to the magistrate. Now you're at almost 60 days. And then it's up to the magistrate to order them. Usually the magistrate will give 7 days to 30 days to correct it. Now you're approaching as much as possibly 70 to 90 days. That's the process.
So do you know how many pools we have at the magistrate now, if any?
I don't know if we have any.
Yeah.
I don't think we do, but I don't think we have any.
The county has the ability to add minnows to the pool. There are minnows that they distribute inside green pools to eat mosquito larvae, and that may even be discussed on the website that
It's up here on the website.
city
yeah.
manager is bringing up, but they often do that.
How do they do that, Tom?
But the problem with green pools, a lot of the times, is that there's no working pump. And there's no working pump because there's no electricity. And there's no electricity because the homeowners have left it. And so if you don't have electricity to the pump, that pool will never get clean.
Unless
So
it gets drained.
it would have to be drained, and then we would want it to be filled with something, or we would want it fenced off to protect the public. But every single time it rains, it's going to fill back up again.
So what they use that I was referring to is called dunks. And I was just looking real quick to see who did it. Okay. A dunk is a block thrown into ponds and standing water that kills mosquito larvae. So I believe that came from the county.
Yeah, the Pinellas County Mosquito Control, and we'll reach out to them.
Okay.
And advise that there is an increase in mosquitoes and encourage for additional spraying. But we'll address the pool. We just need addresses. You said 144th shouldn't be too difficult to find.
It's right on
And
the
any
corner.
others, just as any other code issue or any property unfit for occupancy.
So here's my question. So if you had dunks or you had minnows or what have you, and you have a house that has a green pool, we can't put anything in it because we'd be trespassing?
So we don't want our code enforcement officer,
Right.
including the deputy sheriff, to go on private property to do anything.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So we can't really we can't put a solution out there. We could put a solution in a ditch.
So if it got really, really bad, we would basically take the position that we're using our police powers to protect the public, and this is one of the things that we would do to protect the public. So it all depends on how far you want to go. But it's not unusual for a screen enclosure to have a broken door and have the city go in, take a piece of plywood and screw that piece of plywood into that door so kids can't get through it. But or close off windows or doors, or we do those kinds of things to protect the public. But if it's just a green pool and it's fully enclosed in a screen enclosure, You would just go through the normal code
What if it's
enforcement
not in a
process.
screen enclosure? What if it's in an open yard with a fence around it? Like a
Same
4-foot
thing.
fence? Same thing.
It's protected.
Yeah, just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't think we could do anything because it's private property.
We shouldn't be doing it. We expose ourselves when we
Right.
go on private property.
But you can contact the county.
Well, for additional mosquito
Spraying,
control
do
spray.
they spray it in the evening, at night or something, right? Early morning hour,
Yeah, it says that
pre-dawn?
here's request service or community speaker. Our technicians respond to service requests for mosquito treatment and prevention, so I'll reach out to them and.
Yeah, if nothing else, have them come to our next meeting.
When you reach out to them, Robin, would you email all of us and let us know what you find out so that we can share that with the community when asked?
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Did I ask for public comment? Public comment? Next on the agenda is Finance Presentation of Series 2013 Bond Refunding Opportunity.
So in 2013, the city of Madeira Beach issued a total of $4,760,000 in public bonds and public debt to finance the construction of the city center, the rec center, fire station, other park amenities. The city has then been, as of September 30, 2024, or now into 2025, some of those have been serial bonds, some term bonds, and so some of those principal repayments have occurred so that our remaining debt on that issuance is now $3,620,000. Somewhat recently, I don't recall exactly when, if it was in the last 6 months to year, those bonds have become callable, meaning we can call them, we can pay them down, and we can do that through a refunding. And if the interest rate on those bonds from the Series 2013 debt is higher than the interest rate we could achieve today, then we can have a gain on the refunding, and it makes sense to do so. We explored at a previous workshop the possibility of that, and you approved issuing an RFP for a bank loan to refund that $3.62 million. So the purpose of this presentation is just to walk through the results of that RFP, and then you all can ultimately make a decision of how you want to proceed. So we received two responses on that bank loan RFP, one from Republic Bank and one from Webster Bank. And then on the next slide, the one from Republic Bank was for a fixed rate of 5.3% for the first 5 years. That's not going to work. That would result in a negative savings. But then on Webster Bank, we had a fixed rate of 4.6% through the entire maturity date of 2043. There are also optional call provisions. So if we were to move forward with the Webster, so the Republic Bank option is not an option, right? That would put the city at a deficit position in terms of interest rate today versus the interest on that 2013 debt. But the Webster Bank, there are some minor savings in that, so that's why we wanted to present that to you all. So the specifics on the Webster Bank, non-callable in the first 5 years, and then after years 6 through 7, we can call with a 2% prepayment penalty. After year 8, a 1%, and then after year 8 would be a prepayable without any penalty. So then on the next slide on page 113 of your packet, we would see approximately $37,000 in net present value of savings. And that would be after the payment of issuance costs. So that $37,000 would be over that duration of the new debt through 2043, I believe. We show what those costs, if we were to move forward with the refunding, what those costs of issuance would be. They would total almost $60,000. That includes a bond counsel fee, that includes your city attorney, the financial advisor that we'll use that is the architect of the deal, and then there's also lender counsel fees that would be included, and then we included some other miscellaneous fees. So that's the estimate. Actuals could be a little different, perhaps a little less, but that would be the initial estimate of what those costs of issuance would be should we decide to move forward with the refunding. Some other considerations. This was a public debt issuance in 2013, so there are disclosure requirements associated with that. The city is engaged a provider, which is the Digital Assurance Certification, or DAC, that does the lion's share of that work for the city to make sure we are compliant with our with those disclosure requirements. And so the city pays DAC $2,500 a year to make those necessary disclosure requirements, and we work with DAC to provide audited financial statements and other information as needed, and then they handle that process for the city. So if you include that, we would, by refunding to a bank loan, there are not those prescriptive disclosure, public disclosure requirements. It's not public debt. So we would also eliminate that $2,500 per year cost, which over the time would be about $45,000 of savings over the next 18 years. So then on the next slide on page 115, we've got a couple options. Webster Bank did confirm, knowing that we do have this workshop here today, that they will hold that fixed rate until July 31st. So if you did want to move forward, we would work swiftly to put together a resolution for this bank loan for the refunding of the debt at the next regular meeting. So we see what that tentative schedule would look like. Put all this together on the agenda on July 2nd, then July 9th would be the commission meeting, and then July 31st would be the closing. The other option, so if we want to move forward, that's what would happen there. The other option is that you can reject all offers. There's no financial obligation to what we have undergone thus far. We're simply exploring potential cost savings opportunities here for the city. But if you determine the juice is not worth the squeeze, then we can hold off. And why would we hold off? Well, if we feel that we could be in a lower interest rate environment in the future, then by holding off, and you can see in this next page on page 116, you know, right now, if you look at that, and I think this is the most telling graph, if you look at, we're at the far right at 4.60%. So that's what Webster Bank, one of two responses, that was the best response. They're at 4.6%. You can see what our NPV is, 37,000. Total cash flow, if you don't discount it back to net present value, total cash flow over the life of this thing would be $56,000. But if you move more to the left, you see what the potential higher savings are going to be. Let's say interest rates drop and we're now down in maybe a 4% interest rate environment in, I don't know, 9 months or 12 months or 18 months. Well, now we're looking at a potential 212,000 NPV or 303,000 gross cash flow savings over the life of the refunding, and 16,000 on an annual basis versus 3,000 what we could achieve today if we wanted to move forward with the refunding. Ultimately, the decision is yours. I'll tell you, net NPV savings of 1% isn't overly flashy, but it is savings. Which way is the market going to move? That's why the decision is yours to say we can either hold off and keep an eye on market trends and where interest rates are going, hoping and banking on that we do see, because right now we could call the bonds whenever. We could go through this process again if we see, well, now interest rates are at X instead of Y. Let's try again in 9 months, 12 months. and get the higher, $16,000 to $20,000 a year savings instead of the $3,000. Or we know what we got right now, we can take the $3,000 and know, yes, in 5 to 8 years, 5 years with prepayment penalty or 8 years with no pre-penalty, we can always refund again. So want to just present you with all the facts, and then you all can decide on and give me direction on how you'd like to proceed.
Do we have any public comment? Commissioners?
And what's the staff recommendation?
There is some indications that interest rates are moving downward. In fact, I just got an email today. Let me see. I'll read this to you. U.S. 10-year Treasury yield falls to 7-week low. U.S. 10-year Treasury yield fell to 4.31% on Tuesday, its lowest in 7 weeks, after Fed Chair Jerome Powell said many paths are possible regarding monetary policy, leaving the door open to a July rate cut. Powell stressed caution, noting the Fed will act quickly if the labor market weakens. Markets are now fully pricing in 2 rate cuts by the end of the year with 25% chance of a third. So, it is looking like better, more likely than not, that we will see, rate reductions, but I don't want to give you any assurances by any means, because there's a lot of factors that weigh into that. A lot of geopolitical influences that, can change things. But, if you tell me today, there's some indications that rates could be going down, that if this was a sizable savings, I would see it as more enticing. Selfishly, finance would not have to mess with EMA disclosures, every year. But purely financially speaking, there could be a decent chance that we could see lower rates and maybe in 9 to 12 months get something better. But
No, I concur. From what you laid out here, it just makes sense to kick this can down the road and let's look at what interest rates are doing 6 months from now, in my opinion.
I would agree. I mean, we'd have to spend $60,000 almost to save $3,000 a year and be locked in to not being able to make any changes without paying a prepayment penalty. And the likelihood of interest rates going down is very high. I would agree with Vice Mayor to kick the can down the road and save you the work. Commission?
if interest rates go up, though, don't find out where I live and egg my house or anything, but.
It's like being a weatherman.
Right. You got a 50-50 chance of being right. Although the weatherman won't lose their job.
I've just all I've done is given you all the facts to allow you to make the most informed decision as possible.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Next on the agenda is Public Works Beach Groin Restoration Project Update June. Oh, this is now workshop.
Just wanted to give the Mayor and Commission an update on where we are with our beach growing project, the enhancements, improvements. So, Ms. Wepfer.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I would happily like to report that that project is complete. We completed the project, substantially completed the project as of June 14th, which is right in time for our permit to expire. So there were a few punch list items that were still remaining. I'm not sure if I had shared, I can't recall, but previously we had one small minor issue that when we were first pouring sections of the beach, due to the way that our permit was issued by all entities, we were not allowed to leave the holes open that were underneath the sand. So with that being said, when we did some of the concrete work and then the sand was placed back on top, there were some damages done. That exposed itself from our lovely Hurricane Helene. All of those repairs were completed, but due to that, they had to jackhammer up and then put a patch on top. So myself and Al Carrier did the final walkthrough. It took us several days because we had to expose every single one of the beach groins, walk it, make a punch list, and then the contractor had to repair. So as of June 14th, all of those repairs were completed, were documented. We have one final pay app that we are waiting for. I should receive it any day. We are also coming in within budget, so that is also great. The original bid cost was $3,838,677.99. To date, without that final pay app, we have spent $3,319,591.89. So I'm hoping that we come in under budget, but I'm not sure what that final pay app looks like. So as you can see in some of the pictures, the reason why you see the numbers on those, that's for me for documentation, so I know which beach groin that is. But you can see on the darker section, that was a repair that was done to that specific beach groin. And that was really not that the structural component of it was compromised, more so the aesthetic part of it. The concrete wasn't smooth or the edges were a little bit jagged, so we had them repair that. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any public comment? Commission? Commissioners?
Did you have to get a structural engineer?
We had from the beginning
Did you?
an engineer. We had a marine engineer and also a civil engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner?
Thank you.
If you had it to do all over again, would you have done anything any differently with the design?
There weren't really too many options. If we were to, because we didn't remove the original beach groins, we fortified them. If we were to have removed the original beach groins, it would have been a completely different permit. And we weren't even sure that they would have permitted those, because as you all know, they're not permitting these beach groins any longer. So I personally, they're not beautiful, they're not perfect.
I'm not-
but I
I'm not-
wouldn't,
yeah.
Are you asking about the
No,
process?
structurally. No, structurally.
Oh, they're structurally sound.
How did they, it's a process on the, where it's sandy, where they had to dig down and put these in. I've been curious, how did they pour in the water?
It was tough. Most of the way it was all tidal based, which was another reason why it's taken a year and a half to complete the project.
So they had
you
to
think-
schedule the pour with the
Absolutely.
lowest
And then
tide.
oftentimes they would set the sheets. So if anybody has seen a seawall installation where you vibrate the sheets in, then they would then bolt those sheets through the original H-piles. And then if the tide did not work properly, they would then set plywood on top and until that tide. So where you go through those really high tides, they would set the sheets on multiple different beach groins at one time and then come back and do the pours all at one time. So most of these, there are 200 feet, and they were poured in anywhere from 3 to 5 different pours. So you can actually physically see the different concrete pours in
Yeah, I
them.
could see that as they were doing it, but
Mhm.
I was just curious, on some of them, it seems like they extend pretty far out into the
was-
tide.
It was a bit tricky.
And I didn't know if they were pouring in the middle of the night or low
No.
tide or,
Our permits were very strict, which was another reason why the project took a bit longer. Towards the end, probably anywhere from 50 to 40 feet on the ends, we were hitting a tremendous amount of debris, when they were getting anywhere from 6 to 9 feet. I believe at the ends, those sheets were supposed to be 15 feet long and 2. We had to go back to the drawing board, and we had to go and we had to get a wave run-up analysis and a structural analysis of the 2 end H-piles, which they're 10 feet apart, the originals, and we had to do a load test on them. And they had to be able to sustain, I don't remember what the pressure was, but the pressure was for 2 minutes, and it was actually quite interesting to see how that was done. But to go back to the drawing board, to get that assessment done, to then have to redesign for the scour line to wherever they could run the sheets was quite interesting.
And was that all budgeted in there? Because
It was. We have contingencies in every project
Yeah.
for that reason.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. No, I mean, it's amazing. I'm sure it'll be here long after any of us are.
Absolutely. There is a lot of concrete inside those, and it's 5,000 PSI concrete. So you may, in a few years, see a little chipping here and there. Again, it's not structural, it's mostly aesthetic. But it can easily be repaired.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go anywhere.
Did you use Speed Creek when you, Speed Creek is a fast-setting concrete?
I'm not sure
especially in
the
water.
exact specs of the concrete. It was very specific, though.
Okay.
Great job. Thank you.
It was fun to watch them do it.
It was interesting.
It was neat.
I'm glad
So-
it's over.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is respond to public comments and questions. I feel like we did, because all of the comments were related to what Marcy and her team presented. Do you feel anything that you'd like to add that we haven't already added to that?
No, it was pretty much all about 6A,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you agree?
I like to say there are two wonderful people still sitting here. I'm just.
They're glutton.
Just wondering if you just want to watch us to the end, or you have, okay.
Then it is 9:08 and we are adjourned.